Helga and Andrew were together for almost 3 years. The woman believed that marriage was almost a settled issue, because at first her beloved constantly said that in just a little while they would have free funds for a luxurious celebration. Embarrassed, Helga tried to explain that she didn't need any big celebrations. But the man, hugging her tightly, convinced everything should be perfect for my beloved girl. The best restaurant, a luxurious dress, a stunning photo shoot so that years later we can show the wedding album to our children with such speeches. Helga completely lost the ability to argue with her beloved and patiently waited for Andrew to finally decide that the accumulated funds would be enough for all his ideas. The woman sometimes felt that her partner was fooling her, but he skillfully supported her faith in a happy future. And in the end, she even defended him in front of her relatives. My mother, who moved many years ago following her new husband to the other side of the country, constantly received Helga in phone conversations and correspondence in instant messengers. "Daughter, take off your rose-colored glasses. Since your Andrew says he loves you but still doesn't want to get married, run away from him. He just settled down comfortably, living on everything he had ready, and you don't even have the right to vote to defend a modest wedding, as you want." Brother Denny prudently did not meddle in his sister's affairs. But his wife, Lily, completely agreed with her mother-in-law and convinced Helga, "Honestly, it's a pity to watch how you waste your life. Yes, it was enough for me to see how this Andrew treats you once to understand that nothing worthwhile will come of you. Besides, as far as I managed to catch, his relatives are not at all happy with you. Do you remember how many times he took you to visit your parents, Helga, and love, tried to protect Andrew?" Lily continued to persuade, citing, as it seemed to her, an ironclad argument. "If they greeted you normally, you would happily go to them." To this, Helga had nothing to say. On Andrew's side, her relatives were not at all delighted with her, and the young woman was even disgusted to remember how the face of her beloved mother grimaced when she named her profession. Helen, Andrew's sister, did not remain silent and loudly asked, "So do you do a manicure?" "That's cool. I file and paint my nails all day long. Granny, can you hear?" She shouted towards the kitchen. Andrew will now always go with a manicure and pedicure, and will probably get it too. Helga was not shy about her work, but she was very uncomfortable. In addition, Andrew, after sitting at the table for a while, explained that he needed to make an important call, and went out onto the landing. The man returned when his mother was already putting the cake on the table, and Helga was exhausted by Helen's questions and malicious jokes. She was ready to howl. She wanted to send the whole company and the women looking condescendingly at her to hell. And had the beloved stayed even a few more minutes, most likely the guest would not have been able to stand it, and told the hostesses everything she thought about their snobbery. As if to atone for his escape from the holiday dinner on the way home, Andrew was especially courteous to Helga. In general, the woman in love decided that she would not overreact to the unkind reception given to her and enjoyed the company of her loved one. A year has passed since Helga moved in with Andrew. The second year flew by, the third year was coming to an end, and no changes in social status were foreseen. Moreover, Helga began to guess that her beloved had ceased to be faithful to her. Outwardly, everything was almost the same as before, but small details gave Andrew away completely. At first, he stopped picking her up after finishing work. He made an excuse by saying that he had to stay late because of a large order. And she believed and felt sorry for the unfortunate man who has to do everything for himself and for others. He eagerly flew away with everything that was prepared for his arrival, and completely stopped inviting her somewhere to unwind, as was their custom so recently. Now, after dinner, Andrew lay down on the sofa or sat near the game console to complete the next level. Helga tried to initiate joint entertainment, but it seemed that nothing could move Andrew from his favorite places at home. "Baby, I'm so exhausted," the man explained. "Give me at least a little rest. You're smart, and you understand perfectly how tired I am." Helga quietly stepped aside and went to clean, do laundry, or do some other work. Recently, it has become painful for her that upon returning home from work, Andrew was not eager as usual to hug her, but first hurried to the shower. Helga tried not to force things and not to strain the relationship, fearing that scandals would lead to a breakup. The only act that the woman did against the will of her beloved was that in the second year of living together she brought a small puppy into the apartment, at a quick glance at which it was obvious that there were many breeds among its ancestors. Can you imagine? Someone threw it in a Tide bag in the trash. I threw out the trash. I hear some rustling. I thought that the rats were completely insolent and weren't afraid of anyone. And then I realized that someone inside the bag took it out, untied it, and there. Helga looked helplessly at her loved one, who was wincing from the story told to him as if from an attack of toothache, and spoke categorically. "I have nothing against animals, but you'd better take this flea-beard one to where you found it. He's scary, like some kind of hobbit." Helga objected. "He's not scary. Very charming, too. The paws are so furry. Listen, let's call him Frodo." The woman gave a lot of arguments. And finally, although without much enthusiasm, Andrew agreed. The puppy remained in the apartment and grew up to the delight of Olia. She considered him her best friend, and partly caring for the baby distracted her from thoughts that it was time to give birth to a child. However, before this important event, Helga hoped to one day hear a marriage proposal. She had particular hopes for a joint vacation, which they had planned almost 6 months in advance. But suddenly Andrew changed his mind and explained. "Listen, take someone for your company and go on vacation without me. At work, the project won't be completed without me. We'll relax with you sometime later." Out of solidarity, Helga also did not go to warmer climes. Besides, she didn't want to burden Andrew with caring for Frodo. She took up household chores that everyone had never gotten around to before, tried to make the apartment cozy, and even did some minor cosmetic repairs on her own. Moreover, Andrew has long reproached the woman for the fact that the puppy she picked up caused a lot of destruction to the apartment. "This dog of yours does not bring any benefit, only losses from it. The door was scratched. Give her to a shelter. They will try to place her in a family. And if you really want to, you can play around with sponsoring this establishment a little." However, if in some ways Helga was ready to endlessly adapt to her loved one, then in the matter of the dog's place of residence, she was adamant. "Frodo didn't do anything too terrible, and I won't take him to any shelter." The dog was a faithful companion in all walks, which Andrew increasingly refused to do. Helga sometimes felt that their relationship no longer resembled love at all, but represented a format of communication between the master of the house and the servants. The woman tried to find an excuse for her partner, but the end of the affair was very unexpected. About an hour after Andrew left on a business trip, the apartment door suddenly swung open, and Helga, thinking that the man had forgotten something, jumped out into the hallway in a t-shirt and short shorts and saw her beloved sister. Frodo, not too angrily, but carefully bared his teeth at the illegal guest, who brazenly opened the apartment with a spare key, and she rudely declared, taking pepper spray out of her pocket, "Come on, put the dog somewhere in the toilet, otherwise she won't find it enough. And let's go talk." Such an aggressive start to Andrew's sister's visit came as a complete surprise to Helga. However, she did not argue, and hiding the dog, invited her to go into the room. "In general, we need to talk seriously," the guest announced. "Mom chose an excellent match for Andrew. Profitable, unlike you. The family he ends up with will greatly help his career. And with you, he is only wasting time. So it will work for pennies. He himself does not dare to tell you about it, but he and a suitable bride have already submitted an application. There will be a wedding soon. Only he feels sorry for you, you see, and has no idea how to break this news. And there is no reason for me to start a ceremony with you. So come on, pack your things and clear the area. Leave the apartment. And don't think that you can bear everything that doesn't belong to you. I'll be watching you. Otherwise, you never know. You decide to steal something." Helga recovered from the absurdity of everything that was happening quite quickly, because she simply could not believe Helen's words and tried to shield the groom. "What nonsense. I saw Andrew off an hour ago, and he said goodbye to me very warmly." "Do not believe. You're right. If you want, call him and ask him directly." Helga listened to the advice and told Andrew in a few words about his sister's visit and clarified. "Is it true that you are planning to marry another woman? Do I need to pack my things now," as Helen put it. The not too confident voice on the phone was the first blow for Helga. The woman sat down on a chair and heard something that instantly broke her heart. "Helga, you are very good. You are the best woman in my life. But circumstances have developed so that we need to separate." Under the malicious gaze of Helen, who didn't even think about leaving the room, Helga tried not to cry, but it was impossible to hold back the tears, and she almost shouted, "Why didn't you tell me everything personally?" Andrew, who managed to collect his thoughts after the initial confusion, stopped being embarrassed and answered cheerfully, "Sorry. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about the breakup several times, but somehow I didn't want to offend you. Understand, I'm also a living person, and it's not easy for me to erase everything that happened between us." The man said something else, but Helga, putting the phone on the table, stopped listening to him. Each of his phrases felt like a dull pain in his chest, and he wanted to hide from Helen's mocking gaze. The woman, acting as if under hypnosis, began to pack her things, bitterly reflecting on the fact that the rolling suitcase she had bought for the trip had come in handy. Only now it's not a foreign voyage planned, but a move, essentially to nowhere. Helga stopped abruptly. And where did the moral strength come from? "Look, I don't even have anywhere to go right now. Because with a dog, it's unlikely that I'll be able to quickly find rented housing. Give me a few days, please. I'll find an apartment where the owners will let us in, and I'll take Frodo right away. Give me at least 2 days. By the time Andrew returns, I and the dog will have already left here." However, Helen was determined. "Never. You never know how you will behave. And then how can I justify myself to my brother? Come on, get ready, and don't forget your dog. Listen, why are you pretending to be a naive fool, and even trying to push for pity? You probably know that my brother has always been against animals in the apartment. Only you are a benefactor. True, at someone else's expense. From what I hear, your dog is scratching the bathroom door. Andrew is right. There are only losses from you and this flea. On a good note, we should take money from you for repairs. But I'm not petty. So fold your laundry and clothes and go ahead, sorry, goodbye." Helga became disgusted from her own gullibility and some kind of emotional blindness. She felt deep down that Andrew had not been completely honest with her lately, but she still tried not to notice any warning bells. So I waited. The bells turned into an alarm bell from Helen's shrill voice and real betrayal from Andrew. She somehow threw things, which turned out to be not so much, into the suitcase, put an almost new down jacket into a bulky shopping bag, and picked up a bag with the remains of food for Frodo in the kitchen. She acted mechanically. She opened the bathroom, put a leash on the dog, leaving the muzzle dangling around her neck, and left the apartment where she spent almost 3 years of her life. Frodo carried a bag of food in his teeth, walking sedately, and was nearby, occasionally distracting himself to mark trees that were especially interesting to him. And Helga had no idea where they were going. Both her mother and her brother's wife warned her that Andrew was too keen on getting married, but she didn't want to hear the reasonable arguments of her relatives. The beloved constantly somehow explained the impossibility of getting married in the near future. And now, Please's sister humiliatingly kicked the girl out of the apartment. Helga understood that she was left with nothing. It was possible to try to compensate for the amount of repairs made in Andrew's apartment with her money, because he bought himself a foreign car for the occasion, but the woman did not have the slightest desire to meet with this man and members of his family anymore. Outbred Frodo as a dog that she herself fed and raised. That's all the memory of the relationship. Besides, if she had listened to Andrew, she wouldn't have had a pet. Mom has long been building her happiness on the other side of the country, and going to her, of course, is not an option at all. Only Denny remains. Helga happily found a phone in the pocket of her shorts, in which she left her ex-lover's apartment, and called her brother. Without going into details, the woman asked, "Hello, can I stay with Frodo today?" The brother, sensing something was wrong in his younger sister's voice, immediately agreed and suggested, "Where are you now?" "I'm somewhere in your area on business. Maybe I should grab you and the dog?" Helga happily accepted her brother's offer and named the cafe where she often met with Lilia and her nephews as a landmark. Andrew categorically did not want her relatives to visit his apartment, and now the woman clearly saw in this behavior the frivolity of her former roommate's intentions. The daughter-in-law did not have to wait long. In the back seat of the family car and child car seats were nephews, the eldest, 7-year-old Max, and the youngest, 1-year-old George, who joyfully waved their hands to their beloved aunt and dog. Lily immediately understood from the tear-stained eyes of her husband's sister what had happened, and opening the trunk to help put a few belongings there, Helga casually remarked, "I won't even remind you that I warned you about the vile nature of your Andrew. I'll just say I'm very glad that you woke up. It was high time to end this relationship. Rejoice in your freedom, and do not be sad for someone who is not worthy of you. He's not worth your little finger." A drone and a weakling. Helga sat in the front seat. Frodo managed to sit at the feet of his hostess, very compactly for his size, and soon the whole company was already accommodated in the small apartment of Denny and Lily. Helga understood that in a family with 2 children growing up, she and her dog would greatly displace the owners, and she started calling colleagues from the salon where she worked. However, no one had relatives or acquaintances who could rent out the corner for an acceptable price. Anne's boss, however, offered an option, but the owner of the apartment asked for such a high rental price that, if she agreed to it, she simply would not have anything to live on. Max fussed with Frodo, showing his younger brother how joyfully the dog alternately gave paws, as if playing. And the 2 women watching this sweet picture smiled synchronously. Helga shrugged guiltily. "Sorry, Lily, but it looks like you won't be able to find an apartment quickly." Not even a shadow of irritation or dissatisfaction flashed on Lily's face. On the contrary, she suggested, as if making excuses. "Helga, if you don't mind, let's put you and Frodo on the balcony for now. It's warm now, and there's already a cot there. I myself enjoy watching the city there in the evenings. It will probably be a little inconvenient, but there is generally not enough space in the kitchen." There was a table with a refrigerator. They could barely fit it in. It's a pity that we haven't had time to expand our living conditions yet, but now there will be an incentive to move more actively. Then there will be enough space for everyone. Denny, who came home from work in the evening, suggested that his sister talk to Andrew like a man, but Helga flatly refused. "No, don't. You'll find more problems on your own. Let him live as he wants." Albeit cramped, but not offended, Helga spent the night in her brother's apartment, although she understood that the option of walking from the balcony through the master's bedroom to take the dog for a walk in the morning was not at all convenient. After breakfast, Lily suddenly turned to Olya with a strange question. "Actually, what keeps you in this area? You can find a job anywhere in the city." Helga shrugged. "The owner, Alice, has a chain of salons. She sometimes allows us to change locations due to relocation or when there is a vacancy." The daughter-in-law almost clapped her hands. "Look, I think I know what to do. My aunt left me with a house on the outskirts of the city, with all the amenities, by the way. Of course, no one has lived there since the winter, and a general cleaning will probably be required, but this is the normal way out of the situation. You ask your boss if she has a salon in that area and if there is free space in it, and I think everything will just work out wonderfully. Fresh air. The dog, again, is free. We will visit you. It will be really cool in the summer. I can even move there with the boys." Denny strongly supported his wife's idea. "Lily, but you're right. Really, how did this not occur to me?" Helga doubted that the boss would meet her halfway, but the idea was indeed a good one. The woman decided that she was not risking anything, even if Alice could not transfer her to another salon. You can at least try to live in Lee's house, find money, and go to work. Even if you have to leave early, the issue of housing will be resolved. And now for Helga and her pet, this was the most important thing. The conversation with Alice did not bring any positive results. However, the owner of the salon chain promised. "Helga, you are in good standing with me. So as soon as I think about opening a point in that area, I already know who I'll invite to work there. But for now, I need you here. I think there is no reason for you to leave me, since getting a new job is always problematic. You understand that I do not accept lateness. So please plan your route to work so as not to keep our visitors waiting." "Fine." Olya had no choice but to agree. As a result, the woman's spring and summer were filled with numerous worries, which were mainly associated with the need to travel almost an hour one way from her temporary shelter to her place of work. It's good that thanks to Lily's friendliness and sincerity, Helga did not feel awkward. On the contrary, when the daughter-in-law and her sons, as promised, came to live in a private house, the woman became much happier. Frodo, who attracted boys like a magnet, was also not bored while his mistress was away. Denny and Lily were finally able to get a larger apartment with the help of government payments, and Helga happily tried to repay their relatives for their kind attitude. The woman, when she could, worked with her nephews, and also participated in the renovation process. Maybe it wasn't always easy to manage the active Max and Alex, who had just recently learned to walk and was diligently looking for a way to give himself a bruise, but there was finally no time to think about the unpleasant separation. Lily introduced Helga to neighbors whom she had known since her childhood, and she had a good relationship with almost everyone. As a result, the abandoned woman even gained a small clientele. Even though the part-time work was not too significant and was sometimes even expressed in natural products, it increased Helga's self-esteem. However, she did not always try to bend to what her neighbors told her when they came for manicures. The woman cared little about the opinions of those around her, who, seeing how the dog lived calmly in the house, Frodo was given a personal chair, and he, having a not at all evil disposition, limited himself to attentive observation of everything that was happening around him, said Ook. Keep the dog in the house. The neighbor on the left, Jane, was indignant when she came in to get her nails in order. Look, there's a booth in the yard. Put it on a chain, and that's it. It'll be more useful. Why are you feeding him in vain? Helga was not offended by such talk. Frodo was her true friend, and it was useless to convince a fully grown lady of anything. In addition, the dog turned out to be an excellent companion for the boys, which means that it was necessary to take special care of its cleanliness, and all advice to place the dog on the street was completely ignored. Thanks to the increasing flow of acquaintances who decided to get a manicure from her, the abandoned woman realized that her skills were in demand, and she, especially given the support of her relatives, would not be lost. Helga tried not to remember or think about Andrew. She even began to succeed. Denny was happy for his sister, who now looked much better than on the day when, with eyes reddened from tears, she appeared on the threshold of his old family nest. Lily was also happy that the girl had finally learned to smile again. Closer to autumn, Lily and her children returned to a new apartment, where quite pleasant renovations had already been made. It was time for the eldest nephew to get ready for school and explore a new territory, the desk, where he had to learn his lessons. Lily asked straightforwardly, "What, Helga, are you staying, or will you move with us? Now there is enough space for everyone, and it will be closer to work. It's a shame to spend so much time on the road." Max intervened in the conversation between the adults and said, "There will definitely be enough for everyone, and you will help me with my homework, it's true." However, Helga refused the proposal from her relatives. "If possible, I will stay here. I really liked it here. And Frodo is better here." Denny, without insisting, still told his sister, "If you get bored or sad, just let us know. We will pick you and Frodo up immediately." Agreed? Helga hugged her family one by one and promised, "If anything happens, I'll definitely tell you." "Thank you." Whenever possible, Helga came to visit her brother when her help was needed, but she always finally refused the offer to move into an apartment, saying that she and the dog were much calmer in nature. The woman did not yet suspect that soon the calm period of her life would come to an unexpected end. Cold and autumn flashed by. And then, obeying the eternal law of nature, bright white snow fell to the ground and everything became gloomy. The frost has already firmly grabbed all the puddles and turned the off-road conditions on the roadway into miniature mountain ranges. Helga now had to wake up even earlier to get to work on time. But the slightly shifted regime did not bother her much. Life on the outskirts of the city seemed to come to a standstill as darkness fell. Sometimes, of course, there were noisy cars whizzing by and dogs doing roll call, but overall the area was quiet and calm. Helga liked everything here, and her pet clearly enjoyed this lifestyle. One night, Frodo suddenly began to behave strangely. He worriedly, which was something exceptional for him, touched the mistress's hand with his cold, wet nose, sliding his claws along the floor, running from the door to Helga's bed. Without waiting for dawn, the owner could not stand it and decided to take the pet out for a walk. The woman became worried, what if the dog ate some kind of poison? So, we need to see how the dog behaves on the street. And sighing, Helga quickly pulled on her sweatpants and put her feet in her sneakers. Putting on her jacket, she thought that it was time to prepare winter shoes. There was hardly anything comfortable in the local store. This means that after work, you need to walk around the city's shopping centers and look for new clothes. In addition, it would be a good idea to visit construction stores and consider the option of insulating the veranda. If you approach the matter wisely, then you will get a good winter refrigerator. And in warmer seasons, the veranda can become an additional room. Of course, this idea had to be discussed with Lilia and her brother, but first we needed to at least roughly estimate how much it would cost to implement the bold idea. The dog stomped fussily at the threshold, distracting him from his thoughts, and Helga hurried to open the door. The miracle never happened. The snow never fell. The sky was overcast and quite dark. In the bright light of the lantern, the familiar courtyard looked unusual, and even somehow mysterious. Frodo immediately rushed to the apple tree that grew near the gate, and began to bark, and then whine softly. Approaching, Helga saw a package lying under a tree. It only took a split second to understand that someone had thrown a small child into the yard. The woman grabbed the bundle and hurried into the saving warmth of the house, mentally reproaching herself for not immediately taking the dog outside, which clearly sensed the foundling. In the room, Helga, who had gained experience in handling small children by helping her daughter-in-law care for Denny, unwrapped the blanket and realized that it was time to change the swaddle for the girl lying in front of her. It was very fortunate that Lily left some of her son's things in the house. Therefore, there were no problems getting the little one in order. But what to do now with such a find? Helga shook the blanket to hang it on the radiator, and a note printed on the printer suddenly fell out of the lining. "I'm scared to leave my daughter to the mercy of fate, but there is no other option. Believe me, I have a compelling, almost justifiable reason for doing what I do. Take care of my girl. Heaven bless my little one and you." Helga felt uneasy. It was all very strange. It seemed that the words were sincere, but this in no way connected in the woman's mind with the cruelty of the act. It turns out that the person who dropped the child off deliberately took a risk for the baby's health by leaving her on the street rather than dropping her off in some warmer place. What if Frodo had not asked to leave? Or if she hadn't released it? Leah became scared. But it was necessary to act, and urgently, even if it was night outside. The woman wanted to warm the milk, but was afraid that the child might have an allergy, so she decided to call an ambulance, doctors, and the police. The dispatcher, we must give her credit, sent a team very quickly. The doctors examined the baby and shook their heads when they heard Helga's confused explanations that she had found the child and did not know what to do with him. The paramedic, a middle-aged woman, advised, "We, of course, can now take the baby to a children's hospital, but, to be honest, there are no special indications for this. The girl is about 6 to 7 months old, judging by her development and external condition. She lived in good conditions. She was clearly well looked after, and being in the frosty air did not have time to harm her. Your dog seemed to sense something was wrong almost immediately, and the girl didn't even get hypothermic, fortunately. If possible, wait for the police. Actually, I have no right to say this, but the later the child ends up in a government institution, the better, in my opinion, it will be. You can give your baby warm water from a spoon. If you have zucchini, cook it and puree it. Try to give a treat if suddenly the child begins to cough, sneeze, or any other symptoms appear. Do not engage in amateur activities and call the team. You never know what we missed during the inspection. All clear?" Helga nodded her head, thinking that it looked like she would have to take time off from work today to wait for the police, because bothering Lily and asking her to come was not an option. Not only does the daughter-in-law have to take Max to school in the morning, but she also has to drag Denny across the city. Having seen off the ambulance crew, Helga, under the attentive gaze of the dog, took the girl he had found in her arms and began to rock her. Once upon a time, a woman really wanted to give birth to a child for her beloved Andrew, but the implementation of the idea somehow kept getting postponed. Only now suddenly there was such a wave of tenderness towards a defenseless creature. However, the thought of keeping the child did not arise. As soon as the morning came into its own, the woman warned Alice that she would not be able to come to work, and after listening to the boss's grumbling, for the first time she seriously thought about leaving the salon. The policeman came when the clock was already approaching noon, and immediately began asking Helga about all the circumstances of the case. The woman openly explained that she discovered the child in time only thanks to Frodo. "It's good that he raised me. The baby could have frozen if it weren't for him. Doctors said she was completely healthy and was receiving good care." Fyodor, having studied the note, put it in a bag, patted the smart dog on his wide head, and then clarified. "Well, if the doctors said that everything is fine, then I'm sending your find to the baby home." Swallowing the lump that suddenly appeared in her throat, Helga answered in monosyllables. Yes. Deep down in her heart, she felt sorry for the girl. But the woman believed that at that moment she was doing the only right thing. Soon after the formalities were settled, representatives of the relevant police department appeared at the house, and the district police officer briefly explained to them what had happened. The found baby was taken away, thanking Helga for her concern, and the woman finally relaxed. Having treated Frodo to meat, she began to clean up the house, although it was not dirty. I just wanted to do something, and not sit, immersed in sad thoughts about the fate of the girl. However, it didn't take long to clean up. Jane came to visit, who, as it turned out a little later, was a good friend of Fedor's wife, and was already privy to the details of everything that happened at night and in the morning. The neighbor began to lament. A. Yesterday I spent the night with my daughter. And here on our street I missed such an event. As a friend told me that a foundling had been found, my heart almost stopped. What kind of mother could do such a thing, cuckoo? There are no other words. It's necessary to leave a child in the cold. Ugh. The woman, having spoken, reached into her bag, took out a package, and handed it to the surprised Helga, explaining, "I collected this for your hero." Looking at him, I scolded him and called him a parasite. And it turns out he saved the child. After sitting a little longer and discussing the details of the unusual incident several times, Jane got ready to go home, saying, "Now the times have come. It seems like everything is in bulk, and the children are thrown away like some kind of garbage. Being in an orphanage is like a punishment without guilt. No matter what anyone says, life there is not easy. I know it from myself." The woman fell silent and, brushing away uninvited tears, said goodbye to Helga and left. Frodo looked with an understanding look, as if he was looking into the depths of his owner's soul, and she admitted to the dog, "Imagine, I think I would like the girl you found to stay with us. Why, you get along great with children. And I'm already at such an age that it's high time to become a mother. You and I worked out our practice on children excellently, in my opinion. So they could definitely handle one girl." By chance, or perhaps truly understanding the mistress, Frodo winked, and the touched woman hugged her faithful dog. During an evening conversation, Helga told her daughter-in-law about the girl she had found and asked, "You seem to have mentioned once that one of your classmates is raising a foster child. Maybe you happen to know how the adoption procedure goes?" Lily, it turned out, was not too surprised by the question and promised to find out all the important nuances. The next day, Helga came to work and tried to act as if nothing unusual had happened the day before. However, my thoughts stubbornly returned to the found baby and everything connected with her. Helga did not understand what reason could be good enough to abandon a child on the street in the cold. And she was so immersed in her thoughts that, while working on the nails of one of the regular visitors, she incorrectly answered the questions asked and almost ruined the drawing. As luck would have it, the owner was in the salon that day, who noted the insecure work of the master and, after the client left, invited Helga to a conversation in her small office. "What kind of nonsense have you allowed yourself to eat? Yesterday I didn't go out at all, but today it's like you're holding instruments in your hands for the first time. I understand everything. There may be personal problems. We are all human. But when troubles begin to affect the quality of work, this is unacceptable. Nowadays, there is such competition among nail service professionals that there is simply no right to make mistakes and send visitors away not completely satisfied. So Helga, I want to get an honest answer from you to a direct question. Will you be able to cope with your emotions and work normally? Or should I look for another master at the salon?" Helga had to briefly brief her boss on what had happened, and she unexpectedly softened her tone. "Oh, well, I would have explained it right away. Helping a child is sacred. I thought it was a sin that you were walking. She doesn't seem like a frivolous person, but you never know what happens in life. But still, Helga, pull yourself together. You did everything you could, and you have nothing to reproach yourself with." Unexpectedly, Helga opened up. "You know, I gave the girl to the specialists, it seems, but my heart is restless. I feel some kind of responsibility or something." The insightful Alice clarified. "Aren't you going to adopt her? Keep in mind, this is not taking a dog or a kitten into the house. The hassle is many times greater. True, the return is incomparable, but you need to think about everything extremely seriously. I'll tell you in advance, so that there is no misunderstanding between us, I won't put you on maternity leave. You understand, this is not my practice. But at home, as far as I understand, things are slowly going well for you. Yes, I'll be sorry to part with you, but I won't keep my place for you. No offense, of course. There is constant turnover in salons, there is no escape from it. So maybe it will be possible to find a job for you with a break, but I won't make any promises. In general, your decision should be fully informed." There was a knock on the boss's office. Administrator Lena came in and apologized and said, "Alice." There, the visitor arrived a little earlier than she had been booked in, and behaved rather nervously. I offered her coffee, but she insists that she get a manicure as soon as possible, as if she expected us to lay out the red carpet for her and greet her with applause. But suddenly they offered her food. Alice, dissatisfied and gloomily, besieged the administrator. "Keep your thoughts about visitors to yourself, it will be better. Turning her head to Helga, the boss summed up the conversation. "I think you understood what I said. Then go and work." Helga hurried to her workplace and got down to business that brought her both money and pleasure. She appreciated Alice's frankness, which gave a complete picture of the prospects in connection with the likely changes, and decided to really think through her idea of adopting the found girl in every detail. In the evening, Helga's brother's family came to visit Helga and her faithful Frodo. The joyful boys were busy with the dog, who was happy about the return of the children, whom he considered his charges, and tolerated all signs of attention from them. At this time, the adults were discussing the details of the incident. Denny, looking straight into his sister's eyes, asked, "Helga, as I understand it, you regret that the girl ended up in a state-owned house and would like to adopt her. You've always had a kind heart, but don't you think this is too much? You, of course, have experience communicating with Max and Alex. But that doesn't mean anything. Who knows what problems the baby will have?" Lily echoed her husband and provided valuable information. Adoption is not a simple procedure at all. The documents required are through the roof. When my friend read out the list, my hair stood on end. I briefly outlined the situation and realized that it was not in vain. A friend who passed through the bureaucratic cordon immediately explained that you have at least 3 complicating circumstances at once. First of all, you are not married. And although according to the law this is not a basis for refusing adoption, in reality it may be considered that this is not in favor of the child. Secondly, you want to adopt a specific girl. In general, it turns out that there is a waiting list for small, healthy children. It may well turn out that by the time you collect all the necessary information, the girl will already be in the family. Thirdly, although in fact this is the most important, you don't have the necessary space of your own, George, and the share in our apartment will most likely not be enough. Noticing that Helga was sad, Lily rushed to support her. If you are firmly ready to fight for the girl, then Denny and I consulted and decided that I could issue you a deed of gift for this house. Seeing that his sister was about to burst into tears with emotion, Denny hastened to defuse the situation. However, as an option, you can urgently find a groom without material and housing problems and quickly get married. So 2 out of 2 problems will be solved with one graceful act, at least formalizing the fake marriage. Helga smiled through her tears. Well, this is some kind of fantastic option. It seems to me that it is absurd to count on him. Lily agreed. It's easier to become the mistress of this house anyway. I would never dare to give it into the wrong hands, and so he will actually remain in the family. I think my aunt would be happy. Having officially received a complete list of documents required for adoption, Helga began to obtain all the necessary certificates. She learned the wisdom at the school of foster parents, ran to doctors to pass a medical examination, visited various offices, and took a reference from her boss and a certificate of income. In addition, at the prompting of Lily and a friend, Helga asked the policeman to write a petition with a brief history of the discovery of the child, and Fedor did not refuse. In addition, thanks to a good relationship with the wife of the district police officer, he, in some unknown way, contributed to the fact that Helga was allowed to visit the found girl in the baby's home. Communication with the baby, who was named Diane, became a real miracle for the woman. She held the girl in her arms and was touched. Emotions were reflected on the small face. Even when Diane frowned or began to grunt with displeasure, Helga admired the baby. The nannies were accustomed to visits from the woman, who brought things not only for her pet, but also for other children, and sometimes they allowed her to stay with the girl longer. Although many employees have experienced some burnout over the many years of work at the baby house, they could not help but be happy that Diane, it seems, will soon find her mother. Every time Helga met a neighbor on the street, she sincerely thanked her for her help and support and offered to give her, her daughter, and her granddaughter a free manicure. Jane, they waved it off. Come on, Helga. How can I stay on the sidelines when there is practically a struggle for a child right next to me? I cannot. Let the girl have a chance to quickly become your daughter. No one deserves to end up in an orphanage, and I will help in any way I can. Thank God I have lived in the world and understand people. Fedor is a normal guy. My wife told him what kind of person you were, and that was enough for him. In general, don't worry and don't make things up. We'll have to contact you, but not for free. The money will still be useful to you. Jane and everyone who was aware of the situation tried to support her. Denny and Lily brought children's clothes, which were too small for Max and Ilya, but were in almost perfect condition. The colors, of course, are not particularly girlish, but everything is good. And the Helga ska is very maneuverable and light. Helga did not know how to thank her brother, and especially her daughter-in-law, who provided her with housing and with a generous gesture turned her into a well-to-do lady. Now the inspectors had no chance to reproach the woman for not being able to provide her adopted daughter with decent living conditions. Having run around and collected a set of necessary documents, Helga, with a restless heart, went to the guardianship and trusteeship department. The woman sincerely spoke about her experiences about the found girl, and that contact had already been established between them. Diane is happy when she sees me, smiles, wanders with her eyes, follows me when I leave. And in general, from the first moment, when I took her in my arms on a frosty night, I had the feeling that Diane was my blood. I may not have given birth to her, but I feel a real kinship with her. However, the story did not touch the hearts of strict officials one bit. I don't think that your decision to adopt a child is serious. I understand that you are single now, but you might meet a man. And what then? What if he doesn't need your daughter? What decision will you make then? Will you hand her back like a boring toy and stay with a man? And years later, will you constantly reproach your daughter for not building your own feminine happiness because of her? I think you need to think again. It will be better for everyone. People who have experienced severe loss spend years mulling over the decision to adopt a child. And you just decided since you found it, then the girl should a priori belong to you. This is strange, don't you think? The woman still said something, but Helga, stunned by the refusal, no longer understood much of the meaning of her phrases. There was a noise in her head, and after awkwardly saying goodbye, she left the office because it was the turn of other applicants. As promised, Helga called Lily and told her about the negative result of her visit to the guardianship and trusteeship department. The daughter-in-law supported. My friend warned me that most likely I would have to go through a trial, but don't be afraid, this is normal practice. By the way, think again, maybe you were really excited? Try to deal with your desire without unnecessary emotions, because this is a very big responsibility. Helga said wearily. Yes, as much as I was thinking, I hardly sleep at night, almost without a break. I think around the clock whether I can give poor Diane the real motherly love and care she deserves. So far, my opinion is clear. She will definitely be better off in a family than in a government institution, where the staff most likely does not have enough time for such poor fellows. The employees there are good, but they can't give in to everyone. Well then, don't be sad. Let's use all our resources and victory will be ours. The conversation calmed Helga down quite a bit. And although she was afraid that insomnia would overcome her again that night, she fell asleep almost immediately after returning home and walking with Frodo. The woman even forgot about food. And it's good that the alarm clock on the smartphone was set in advance for the required time of getting up. However, this precaution was even unnecessary. The faithful dog, obeying some natural feeling, woke up the owner a few minutes before the nasty bell rang. Helga had to tell Alice about the failure, and the boss surprisingly provided her subordinate with moral support. I admit, I somehow admire your determination to fight for a girl you don't know. It's a pity that your running around the authorities has so far been without result. After all, as far as I understand, this means that the schedule will have to be rearranged again. Well, nothing. I think the girls will cooperate. I have plans to open a location in the area where you live, and as soon as all the formalities are ready, they will transfer you there. I warn you right away, the salary at first may be less than here. But I think there are prospects for improvement. Helga, inspired by the support of her boss, went to her workplace. A transfer to a new location could actually make her life much easier and save valuable time that she is currently spending on the road. However, for now it was necessary to act precisely in the circumstances that prevailed at the moment. Helga, whose income had noticeably decreased while running around various authorities, tried to save money, but still could not deny herself the pleasure of looking into the children's departments whenever possible to look for things for her future daughter. She had no doubt that, even through court, or even several court hearings, she would be able to achieve her goal. Once, in a special department located in a large shopping center, a woman, turning into an aisle with toys, almost collided head-on with her ex. Andrew was noticeably embarrassed and tried to hide his emotions behind a cheeky tone. "Hello, what fate are you? Are you picking up anything for your nephews? Or is there something I don't know about you?" The man, following his habit, smoothed his hair with his palm, and Helga noticed the sparkling rim of a brand new wedding ring on his finger. The meeting with her former roommate stirred resentment in Helga's soul, and she did not even try to answer him politely. "Why do you need to know anything about me?" With the hands of his sister, he threw me out of the apartment into which I, like some fool, invested money. And now one might think you are interested in something? Go somewhere your own way, and don't stand in my way. Andrew was taken aback. He did not expect such a rebuke from Helga, who, from her experience living together, was distinguished by meekness, tenderness, and a tendency to compromise. A man who married out of pure convenience and fell under the control of a strict wife has already regretted that he followed the lead of his family and entered into this profitable, but clearly unhappy marriage. The years spent with Helga now seemed to him the most golden time of his life. He would not mind restoring a relationship with her and receiving love and understanding from his former partner, although he was worried about how to do everything so that his legal wife would not know about the affair. Andrew understood that in this case the costs of marriage would most likely be in vain, but whoever doesn't take risks, as you know, doesn't drink champagne. Thinking quickly, the man tried to soften his impression. "Sorry, Helga. I still think that you are the best thing that has happened to me in this life. Please forgive me for hurting you. I was wrong, and I wish I could go back in time and do things differently. But unfortunately, no one has yet invented a time machine." Andrew joked, trying to evoke positive emotions in his ex. But Helga grimaced as if she had bitten off a slice of lemon and admitted, "Andrew, I was also mistaken. It was not worth wasting time on you and money on your apartment. These funds would be very useful to me now. But what can we do now? Just spit and move on with your life. Okay, no need to waste my time again. Goodbye." Andrew tried to tell Helga something else, but she hastily left the department, and he did not dare to follow her. However, it seemed to him that he still had a chance to get his modest mistress back. After thinking a little, the man deposited money on Olia's card in the amount of about 2 of her salaries, hoping that this would begin their dialogue. He imagined how the proud woman would return the amount to him, and then gradually they would begin to communicate. But Andrew miscalculated. Helga really needed the money. And having received a message about their receipts, she immediately rushed to hire a good lawyer to conduct the trial. Lily helped find the specialist, who in turn learned about him from her friend who had gone through this unpleasant process. Surprisingly, the amount received was definitely enough for the fee. Helga saw this as a very good sign and was not mistaken. The lawyer brilliantly defended the interests of her and the found baby. At the beginning of the summer, after almost 8 months of struggle for Diane, the girl was officially recognized as her daughter, and a completely new stage in their lives began. Alice, whose opening of a new salon was delayed, suggested that the employee go on paid leave for the first time. This, of course, is not a decree, but I think everything will be resolved successfully soon. You will be able to find a nanny for the girl while you work. Helga smiled happily. Thank you very much, Alice. I have so many helpers. Just a miracle. The daughter-in-law and the boys have arrived for the summer, and the neighbors are vying with each other to offer help. The stern boss smiled. Well, that's just wonderful. So, as soon as there is news, I will call you about the arrival of little Diane home. Helga organized a small celebration for the closest people who provided great support on the way to the goal. In addition to her brother and family, Jane and the district police officer along with her wife were invited. Those gathered tried not to make noise, and Max and George, in the company of their tailed friend, were almost constantly in the room where their new relative was quietly sleeping in the crib. Helga warmly thanked everyone who helped in her difficult task. Consider this a little belated gift, but what a gift. Now you have a daughter, and she has you. I wish you both good health, and so that you always understand each other and be happy. After a pleasant evening, Helga, her brother's family, and little Diane remained in the house. The smart dog lay down not in his favorite chair, but right next to the baby's crib. Max ran to the adults and showed them this touching picture. Look, Diane now has a personal nanny. Lily hugged her son tenderly. Frodo guarded you and your brother. And while talking with you, I realized how to treat children. It's quite normal that he took the baby under his wing. Such a smart dog is simply not capable of doing anything differently. With the advent of her adopted daughter, Helga seemed to have a second wind. Lily sometimes jokingly said, Listen, it seems like you don't even need help. You get up before everyone else, have time to clean the house and take care of the boys and daughter. It's like I'm relaxing here at a resort. Although at the stage of collecting documents for adoption, people who knew about the situation tried to warn Helga and repeatedly tried to tell her that the girl may have hidden pathologies. The fears turned out to be unfounded. That's what the old paramedic said. The baby received excellent care right up until the moment she was thrown onto the street. The girl grew up and had practically no serious illnesses, so ordinary childhood ailments. And in terms of intelligence with age, she could give a head start not only to Ilya, but also to Max. The issue with work was also resolved perfectly. Alice managed to open a new salon, where she invited Helga to work. The journey from home to work and back now took very little time, and the woman was completely happy. One day Andrew called her, and in a trembling voice began to invite her on a romantic date. And Helga, listening to her former roommate, wondered how she could even fall in love with him. After saying goodbye and pressing end, she blocked the number that she once knew by heart and felt that she had now truly turned the page on the past completely. Even if Andrew turned out to be not entirely a scoundrel and transferred money for the repairs made, the woman still did not want to communicate with him. She had already spent part of her life on him and no longer wanted to give him even a few minutes. 5 years flew by unnoticed. Diane grew up smart and affectionate, refuting all doubts about bad heredity from the parents who abandoned her. Watching the girl reach for knowledge, Helga decided to enroll her daughter in preparatory courses at school. The meeting for parents had already passed, and the woman and Diane even managed to buy all the stationery that the teacher recommended. The first lesson was supposed to take place in a week. Changes were coming, but Helga still had no idea how large-scale they would be. In the meantime, we could enjoy the still warm evenings of the coming autumn. Twilight was in no hurry to drive away the daylight, and the woman, without fear, let her daughter walk in the yard in the company of Frodo. Helga had no doubt about the dog's prudence. And even if Diane had planned a dangerous prank, her faithful bodyguard would have prevented any trouble. One day, looking out the window, a woman saw her Diane talking with an unfamiliar man. The dog stood between the interlocutors, blocking the little mistress, but Helga's heart pinched unpleasantly. Anticipating danger, she hurriedly went down the steps of the stairs, stood next to the dog, the daughter of a stranger, and warily asked, "Good evening. Did you want something? Are you looking for someone?" The man, looking up from his careful examination of Diane, looked up at the woman and, trying not to scare anyone, said hello, introduced himself and explained, "Good evening. I'm Justin. Have you heard of such an entrepreneur from the neighboring region?" Helga shook her head and the man continued, "Apparently I need to talk with you about the events of almost 6 years ago. It so happens that it seems that you have perfectly solved the problem that you acquired because of a person close to me. There can be no excuse for what happened in the past, and I am indebted to you forever." Helga's legs almost gave way. She realized that the man had a direct relationship with the girl whom she raised as her own daughter, and frantically wondered what to do and how not to scare the little girl with unexpected information. Unable to think of anything better, the woman asked Diane, "Daughter, take the apples and take them to your grandmother together with Frodo. Sit there and entertain her a little." Otherwise, she complained that her relatives had not come to visit for a long time. "Play something, and in the meantime, I'll talk to our guest. Don't rush home. I'll come for you myself." The girl looked sternly at the man and asked with narrowed eyes, "And you won't offend my mother?" Justin put his hand to his heart and promised, "I won't offend you for anything." Diane hesitated for a few seconds, and then turned to the dog. "Frodo, let's go to Grandma. I'll just carry the apples, otherwise I know you. You won't be able to carry half of them." The dog, who adored his owner, only waved his tail in response. Helga watched Diane and dog go out the gate and invited an unexpected visitor. "Why are we standing on the street? Let's at least go to the veranda. Otherwise I feel the conversation will be long." There was a table and chairs on Helga's veranda, and the woman suggested, "Sit down and tell me. Otherwise my nerves are already on edge." The man did not refuse the offer and, sitting on a chair, told a story that made Helga feel uncomfortable. "In the past, my family and I lived in a neighboring state, 300 kilometers from your town. My wife, Margaret, gave birth to my daughter, Dorothy. Beautiful, healthy. I tried to make life easier for the woman I love. We also had an au pair. She did the cleaning and cooking. More precisely, she was an old friend of my mother and practically part of our family. This woman raised me and treated me, if not like a son, then like an adored nephew. Aunt Isabel and Margaret received her very warmly, and she really doted on her daughter. Everything was great. Both the house and the business are well promoted, and with prospects for development right up to the capital. In general, I was so successful that my competitors decided to destroy me, not physically. No, not at all. On the other hand, they approached him in order to hit him harder. They wanted to trample him mentally. And for me, this was worse than death. As I found out completely after the fact, a person was hired who studied all the information about my wife, found an approach to her, and then began a secret affair with her. It's probably a banal story. But being in this whole situation is so disgusting that all the comedy is not even felt. I would almost not blame my wife for her affair, if not for the sad consequences. One day I received photographs by email in which my wife and a man I didn't know were having fun. At first I just wanted to break her neck, but I pulled myself together to do the irreparable and instructed a good friend to check if the pictures were real. You never know, maybe it's editing. But the timid hope was dashed by reality. Margaret did have some fun on the side. Moreover, the pictures were definitely fresh, because they showed a tattoo that she had done quite recently. Of course, it's also my fault that my wife fell for it and cheated on me. I was always missing at work. One issue urgently needed to be resolved, then another. Of course, Aunt Isabel took care of the household chores, but it was my support that Margaret needed. It was this thirst for warmth and participation that this scoundrel caught her. I don't know how I was able to survive the betrayal then. I spoke harshly to Margaret, but within the law, without assault. She cried, promised that she would break off the connection, which jeopardized our marriage. I loved her very much then and decided to give her another chance, without even realizing that this would be a huge mistake. About a week after Margaret and I had an unpleasant conversation, and we seemed to agree to try to save our marriage, she disappeared along with her daughter. Aunt Isabel's wife told her that she needed to go to the children's clinic for a scheduled appointment, and she left home. This has happened before. Therefore, there was no reason not to release them. When Margaret and Dorothy did not return for dinner, Aunt Isabel became worried and began calling my wife to find out if it would make sense to reheat the food. But the phone was unreachable. Even then, there was no alarm. Aunt Isabel told me that Margaret and her daughter seemed to be late at the clinic, where appointments are usually on time and there should be no queues. And she asked to go there, saying that her heart was not in the right place. I rushed and found out that Margaret and her daughter had not appeared there at all. That's when I got worried. While driving along the route to the house, I was looking through my email and, having opened a letter demanding money and naturally a ban on contacting law enforcement agencies, I almost got into an accident by sharply slamming on the brakes. I did not officially contact the police. I was very afraid that I was being watched or wiretapped. And as best I could, I calmly drove to the house, and through Aunt U, whom I sent away from the house, fearing the wiretapping, I contacted a good friend so that he could help unofficially investigate the disappearance of his wife and daughter. He advised me to agree to all demands, and I did everything exactly according to the instructions of the criminals, and began to wait for news. I believed that I could make up for this money. But terrible information came. The police department called me and informed me that they had found Margaret's burnt-out car. There were 2 bodies inside, an adult woman and a baby. An examination followed. It was established that both lasting bodies belonged to my own girls. Aunt Isabel had a heart attack, and as a result, almost on the same day, 3 people, without whom I could not imagine my existence, ended up in their graves. I then began to get drunk almost every day, and some kind of supernatural anger helped me not to completely slide to the very bottom. I wanted to find the people responsible for the deaths of Margaret, Dorothy, and Aunt Isabel. But it was no use. The man seemed to have disappeared. My ill-wishers seemed to calm down. They even expressed sympathy. But running the business became completely uninteresting to me, and I sold it. Almost for next to nothing. You could say that he gave most of the money to charity, and he gradually began to learn to move on with his life. Justin fell silent, and Helga became perplexed. If the examination found that his wife and daughter died, It turns out that Diane cannot be involved in this tragic story. Why then did the man come to them? Was the expert mistaken, and the visitor buried someone else instead of his wife and daughter? The man seemed to have considered these unvoiced questions in Helga's eyes, because he spoke again and startled the woman with his confession. "You seem to have already guessed that the girl you are raising is my daughter." Helga involuntarily began to shake her head, unable to say anything. And Justin, realizing that it was difficult for a woman to accept such news, gently began to tell him further. With difficulty, with the support of my parents, who themselves could barely hold on after the news of the death, but I stopped drinking. Although he changed his field of activity, he went back to business. What else did I have left? I didn't want to upset my parents, so as not to lose them. This is how I spent these endlessly long years, stretching from the moment I last saw my wife and daughter. I never became close to a single woman, fearing betrayal. And 2 days ago, returning from work, I saw a female figure at the gate of the house. I was surprised after all. Strangers usually don't wander around our ranch. I thought that maybe one of the neighbors' housekeepers or nannies needed something. He drove up and got out of the car. I come closer, and it's Margaret herself standing in front of the gate. She was emaciated. There were bruises under her eyes covering half her face. But undoubtedly my wife appeared before me, swaying. Of course, I was afraid for my own mind, suspecting that I had gone crazy. I went to visit my wife and daughter at the cemetery, and then suddenly there was such a turn. Margaret fell to her knees in front of me and began to beg for conversion, but I had no time for these sentiments. What worried me more was not even the fact that under the name of my wife, some other woman had found her last refuge in the churchyard. The most important thing for me was to find out why Margaret returned alone and where my daughter went. I dragged my wife into the house and began asking questions. And the more she talked, the worse I felt. It turns out that on the day of her disappearance, Margaret went to meet her lover, but not for fun. The man decided to get money from my wife using a video that he shot secretly and promised to post on all available networks in order to disgrace her, and at the same time undermine my business reputation. How Margaret cried when she said that she decided to take Dorothy with her, so that after meeting her lover she could drop into the clinic. The scoundrel decided to up the ante and said plans had changed. The money that Margaret brought was not enough for him. He demanded that she live in one of the houses as a living toy. Neither tears, nor pleas, nor promises of money could bribe this cynic. The only thing my wife could agree on was to save her daughter. So that the baby could not be recognized, she was changed, and her lover allowed Margaret's note to be printed on a printer, but not written by hand. Moreover, he strictly warned that if the text contains a hint of the name of the girl or her parents, then Dorothy will not survive. Laughing, he said that he would not feel sorry for the child. Frightened Margaret, of course, agreed to everything. She, naive, thought that I would certainly look for my daughter, and I didn't know that a lot of people were involved in this, and that false cases had already been prepared and the expertise was bought on the vine. Margaret was in some country hotel, and she was entertaining the crowd. And a week ago I managed to escape and get home. She may be exhausted with obvious health problems, but she accomplished the almost impossible and gave me hope. After listening to my wife's story, I realized that our daughter might be alive. We had to bring heaven to earth, but we managed to find the bribed expert and even get on the trail of the found little girl, about the same age as our Dorothy. It's good that Margaret roughly figured out how long they had been traveling before Dorothy was taken from her. It's just a miracle that you haven't moved anywhere. Otherwise, the search would have been delayed. It will probably be difficult for the girl to accept the truth, but Margaret and I are her parents. In fairness, it is we who must educate and raise her. We, of course, want to offer you compensation. We'll pay you any amount you name. Helga felt bad. Only in her worst dreams people came to her and tried to take Diane away. A woman would jump up screaming from such visions, invariably frightening the sensitive Frodo, and sometimes even her adopted daughter, who was generally known to sleep soundly. And now the nightmare is happening in reality, and it's impossible to wake up. The silence that settled on the veranda dragged on, and then Helga went on a tirade. Do you want to know what compensation will suit me? I'll tell you, simply leave me and my daughter Diane alone. I don't need anything more from you. Let me raise my daughter in peace, and don't dare interfere in our lives. A baby is not a toy. And for that matter, your wife has no excuse. Why the hell did she go there with her little daughter? It was clear that she was going towards the criminal. Again, this man of hers could easily do anything to the girl, and how would your thick-headed wife control him? Oh, he allowed her to print the letter. What a benefactor. Do you know that your daughter was planted under that apple tree for me? Frosty night. Did you see the dog that stood in front of your daughter? It was he who sensed that someone had appeared in the yard. If it weren't for him, it's scary to even think what would have happened to the baby. She was essentially left to the mercy of fate. Will it freeze or not? Do you think I'll give you my daughter so calmly? What for? No, I will fight and will definitely win. We are used to exchanging everything for money. Everything is for sale. Do you think you just need to name the price and you can calmly ruin fate? Who do you think you are? Helga took a breath and realized that businessmen have much more opportunities. She was frightened by the prospect of being left without a daughter and began to convince the man. You are an adult and you understand that it will be difficult for a girl to change something in life. How can I explain to her that she will now have two mothers? Diane grew up in my arms. She's used to me and loves me. Can you imagine how much harm this unexpected news could cause her? Please, let's leave everything as it is. I tell you, Helga, no need to shock Diane. Please, if your daughter is dear to you, spare her. Don't ruin her fate. Of course you are running a business, and they are better off financially apparently. But is it just about money? Justin wanted to object, but at that moment his phone rang so loudly that Helga even flinched from the ringing. She saw how the man turned pale, almost silently listening to his interlocutor, and guessed that the complicated tragic story had received an unexpected continuation. At the end of the conversation, Justin roared. So you were completely powerless? Is this what you want to tell me? The voice from the receiver monotonously explained something, and Helga could hear the words. We sympathize. Sorry, we did everything we could. The woman realized that something irreparable had happened, and Justin, who ended the conversation, confirmed her assumption. Margaret died. This time there can be no mistake. I put her in the hospital with a doctor I knew so that they could treat her, at least give her some vitamins, and she, after being there for a while, just went out the window. Doctors tried to save Margaret, but her body was too exhausted. She was given anesthesia, she just fell asleep. Her heart stopped beating. Justin looked confused, and compassionate Helga brought him water and a sedative from her personal supplies. Here, take this medicine, you will feel better. The man thanked him in confusion and got up to leave. However, before reaching the door a few steps, he turned to Helga and asked, Let's postpone the continuation of this conversation. I will arrive in 4 days, having previously agreed on a time convenient for you, and then we will decide what to do. Helga looked after Justin, and only when he got into the car parked at the beginning of the street, she hurried to her neighbor to get Diane, whom, it turns out, her parents called Dorothy. Frodo noticed the mistress in advance and opened the unlocked door for her. And Jane, who was happily playing checkers with the girl, immediately noticed that Olia had no face. After waiting for Diane to leave, Jane asked in a whisper, What kind of guy came to see you? Ex yours or what? I really wanted to call Fyodor so that he would look at you by chance. Helga, who herself still couldn't believe the sudden turn of fate, did not tell her neighbor anything, limiting herself to gratitude for helping to keep the girl occupied and a promise. I'll tell you everything later, but now we'll go. I'm kind of tired today. On the way home, Helga squeezed Diane's hand so tightly that she even playfully asked, Mom, are you afraid that, like ours, one day I'll take a balloon and fly away? The woman almost burst into tears, but tried not to let the girl notice her depressed mood. Sorry, Diane, I was just lost in thought. Helga spent the whole night without sleep. She looked on the internet for all the information she could find about Justin, and was surprised that practically no sharply negative statements were published about him. Most of the articles were, of course, devoted to the misfortune that happened to his wife and daughter. Helga looked closely at the posted photos, but from the small images, and even in poor resolution, it was almost impossible to make out whether Diane or another child was in them. In the morning, after taking her daughter to kindergarten, the woman rushed to visit her daughter-in-law, warning her at work that she would be late for an hour. Lily, after listening to her, was silent for a long time, and then supported her relative. Diane is officially your daughter. Perhaps her father can go to court. But it seems to me it is better to try to resolve the matter peacefully, Helga admitted. Lily, I'm incredibly scared. Maybe I should just drop everything, take Diane and go somewhere, so that her father will never find us? The daughter-in-law nipped the idea of running away in the bud, without even hearing to the end what country Helga had decided to leave for. In my opinion, doing this will only complicate everything. You say that this Justin will come to you in 4 days. This means it will be approximately Saturday. So that's great. Denny and I are also present at this meeting. And it would also be a good idea to invite the lawyer who helped Diane win the case. When Justin called Helga and they agreed on a time to meet, the woman realized that there was nowhere to retreat. The businessman, to the surprise of the woman, her brother, daughter-in-law, and lawyer, arrived alone for the fateful negotiations. He had several large packages in his hands. Having met and shook hands with the men, Justin explained the contents of his burden. These are all gifts for my daughter. After everyone was settled, the businessman began negotiations that were more difficult than he had ever conducted. Helga, I am immensely grateful to you for preventing Dorothy, let me call her that, from staying in a government institution for a long time. I am ashamed that I believed in the results of the examination and did not double-check them. After all, having done this, the search for my daughter would not have been stopped, and we would have met with her much earlier. I've been thinking all these days, and he made a difficult decision. Let's not shock the girl. You, Helga, were absolutely right when you said that the truth would only bring her suffering. Let everything remain as it is. I have only one request. Under any pretext, allow me to come and visit my daughter. I won't bother you often, but at least on weekends. Let's go somewhere together. The lawyer, realizing that his services would not be needed, hurried to leave, and Justin, Denny, Helga, and Lily sat, thinking a little more about how to introduce Diane to her father. As a man who cares about the beauty of his nails and comes in for a manicure, or as a colleague, Lily came up with a brilliant idea. Oh, what's there to invent? Justin, come as a fan. Then gifts for Diane would be appropriate. Everyone agreed on this option. And Lily's idea turned out to be very promising. In the process of communication, sincere sympathy arose between Helga and Justin. A year after they met, which began with extreme stress, they got married, and the man legally became the father of his own daughter. A little later, he resolved all the issues in his hometown and moved to Ole and Diane to always be close to those he loves. Olivia was beginning to lose patience. She'd been preparing for this evening since yesterday, shopping, cleaning the apartment, preparing all sorts of appetizers and entrees for the family and friends. And now she was sitting there listening to her husband mock her. Adrian has an amazing ability to find a flaw in everything. Moreover, this gift is revealed in the presence of strangers, and when she and her husband are alone, more sensitive, loving and affectionate husband cannot find. But when the third, fourth, 10th person showed up, he was a fountain of sarcastic remarks about Olivia. This time she was the protagonist of the bad joke. I passed by a hairdresser's yesterday, Adrian said. Looking out the window, my wife was sitting in a chair, and the master was working on her. I think I'll wait. She comes out, and what do you think? A bald haircut. His sister Emma chuckled, running her spoon into the salad bowl to make herself a Caesar dressing. I wish they'd shaved her bald. Adrian laughed, and that laugh was like a sharp arrow through Olivia's body, electrocuting her brain and making her tense. She'd been dyed red. You wouldn't believe it, her hair was the color of copper wire. What about you? My mother-in-law asked, snacking on a ham and cheese roll. I'm sure I kicked her back to the hairdresser's to change her hair color. Yeah, now. So she can pay those barbers and hairdressers again? I made her dye her hair at home. If you look closely, you can even see that not all of her hair is dyed. There's copper coming through, look closely. The guests laughed, eyeing Olivia's hair, and she sat there red with embarrassment. Every time Adrian mocked her, she wanted to get up and leave. One time she had done just that, but then there had been such an enormous scandal. You have no respect for my family, Adrian yelled. They don't come to visit us often enough to be disrespected like this. How could you do this to them? Olivia stood there like a delinquent child with her head down, unable to say anything to her husband. She regretted leaving the table 100 times over. She should have been patient. But this time the cup of patience was overflowing. No, she would not repeat the last attempt and leave the living room at the table she herself had lavishly set and her husband's relatives feasting. But she had to stop this bacchanalia, or it would never end. When the guests were a little tired of laughing at the color of Olivia's hair, poured the liquor into shot glasses and started snacking again, she said, "The other day I went to the orphanage where your children live. I looked at them, brought gifts and sweets. You know, they're so cute. Why don't we take them for the weekend?" The principal said it's possible. The room fell silent. The room fell silent as they heard Olivia's words. She raised her glass of wine as if nothing had happened. "Adrian, let's drink to the children you abandoned. I wish them to find decent parents, more worthy than you." A second later, her husband's heavy hand came down on her cheek. Her face flamed, burning as if it had been scorched by 100 tongues of flame. Adrian reached up, grabbed her hair roughly, and pulled her away from the table. During her happy student years, Olivia fell in love. Kieran was 2 years older than her and had already graduated from the military academy. He was as handsome as God, and when Olivia saw him in his uniform for the first time, the ground swam under her feet. He was tall, slender, with radiant brown eyes that looked like velvet, and he seemed to her like a man of unearthly beauty. They met on May Day in the city park. Olivia and her friend Mel were walking along an alley. The weather lavished the small riverside town with sunshine and warmth. A light breeze fluttered the white silk scarf around Olivia's neck. Suddenly it flew off her shoulders, carried by the wind, and flew away. Oops, the girl caught herself and rushed after him. She ran, and the handkerchief fluttered and fluttered in the wind. As soon as the airflow subsided a little, it dropped to the pavement next to the strange guy. He picked up the silk scarf and held it out to Olivia. "Is it yours?" the boy asked, not even thinking to address the strange girl as you. "Yes, thank you," she replied, and reached out to take the handkerchief, but he suddenly hid it behind his back. "Favorite thing?" the guy asked, smiling an open, slightly joking smile. "Grandma's present ... Can I have it?" "Of course you can," he answered. "Only in exchange for your name." "My name's Olivia. Give me the handkerchief." "That's a beautiful name. Why are you so scared? I won't eat your grandmother's gift after all." The stranger smiled, and Olivia felt so awkward that she was ready to turn around and leave the handkerchief and run out of the park. Seeing her confusion and embarrassment, the guy decided not to torture the girl any longer, spread the silk and gently lowered the handkerchief on Olivia's shoulders. "I'm sorry if I scared you or hurt you." "I didn't mean to," he admitted. "I was just walking alone in the park. It's a holiday, springtime, everyone's happy, having fun, going on rides. I'm Kieran." The guy held out his hand to her, and Olivia instinctively offered hers. His palm was warm. "Can I keep you company, or can you keep me company?" "I see you're out alone," too, Kieran said. "No, I'm with a friend," Olivia said, pointing toward Mel, who was standing nearby. She saw Olivia waving her hand and walked over to her friend and the strange guy. "Girls, let's have some ice cream." Kieran suggested it. "My treat." The company headed towards the summer cafe. Kieran turned out to be very sociable, cheerful, and confident. After ordering ice cream for himself and the girls, he asked, "Are you students?" "Yes, we study at the Teacher Training Institute," Mel answered, flipping her leg over her foot so that her already short skirt almost completely exposed her thigh. Kieran's gaze caught the lacy elastic of the stocking, and Olivia noticed it. Mel's doing her thing. She's going to start seducing Kieran, she thought. Olivia and Mel had been friends since freshman year. They were always together. Everyone around them wondered what could bind these two very different girls so tightly together. Mel was bright, even a little flashy. Long black hair flowing down her back almost to her waist. Fashionable clothes, chiseled figure with a narrow waist and lush breasts attracted the eyes of guys. And the girl knew her strengths and never missed a moment to use her feminine charms. Olivia was the opposite of her. She dressed modestly but tastefully. Her straw-colored hair was always braided or arranged in a bun at the back of her head. Her face was almost completely devoid of makeup, and her unremarkable, ordinary figure. Nothing made her stand out from the other students at the Pedagogical Institute. Mel was just suffocating, dying from the lack of male attention. "I should have gone to law school," she complained. "There are plenty of guys there, but in our group there are 2 nerds with glasses, and the rest are all girls." "Did you see the competition for law school?" Olivia asked her. 38 people per seat. You're retaking your history of literature exam for the 3rd time, and you're still talking about law school. No, Mel, you would definitely fail the entrance exams for lawyers. Her friend understood this and only sighed, listening to the lectures without much interest. But she found a way to stay visible. At lunchtime, Mel went to the cafeteria of the neighboring building, where mostly boys studied. This way, she often managed to make new acquaintances and even short-term, non-committal romances. When Kieran told a little about himself and the girls learned that he was graduating from the military academy, Mel's interest in the guy grew exponentially. "What do the officers do for fun?" she asked Kieran. "Just like everyone else," the boy answered. "They go to the movies, meet and date girls, go for walks. I like to go to the skating rink in winter and sometimes play hockey with the guys." "For me, sports are a punishment," Mel said, her red lipstick on her chubby lips. "And movies are boring." "What do you do for fun?" Kieran asked. His question was directed at both girls, but he was looking at Olivia. The velvet gaze of his brown eyes made her a little embarrassed. And Mel rambled on. "I love parties. I went to one recently, invited by some guys from the physical education department. Music, wine, rock and roll. We had a great time." "Do you go out?" The question was directed at Olivia, but Mel didn't give her a chance to keep the conversation going. Nah, Olivia here prefers to read romance novels and cram for notes. I barely even got her out today. It's a crime on May holidays when everyone is out enjoying the warmth and spring sunshine, walking around with balloons and flags, having fun, to sit at home and read books. Stop it, Olivia tried to stop her, but Mel couldn't be deterred. "I also really like picnics," she said cheerfully. "How do you feel about going out, Kieran?" "I'm fine with it," he answered, not taking his eyes off Olivia. "Why not, if there's some meat marinated with spices, a bottle of red wine, and good company?" "It's decided. Let's go to the countryside together," Mel suggested. Olivia looked at her reproachfully. How could she impose on a guy she didn't know? But to her surprise, Kieran agreed very willingly. "Next Sunday we can go to the river," he said. "You owe us appetizers, we owe you meat and wine." "From who, you?" Olivia didn't understand. "You're the one who calls yourself you?" "No, of course not," the boy laughed. "It just occurred to me to bring a good friend of mine along." They finished their ice cream and walked around the park some more. Kieran asked for Olivia's phone number as he said goodbye to the girls at the exit. The girl took out a small notebook from her purse, wrote down her home number, and tearing out a sheet of paper, gave it to Kieran. "Where do you think you're going, girl?" Nicole asked Olivia as she watched her granddaughter pick up the cheese and sausage sandwiches and put them in a container. "Mel and I and the 2 boys are going to the river," Grandma Olivia said cheerfully. "We're going to grill kebabs and have fun." "I'm glad. It's high time you had a rest. You've been sitting at home like a recluse." Olivia threw on a light jacket over a white knit sweater, laced up her sneakers, and gave her grandmother a peck on the cheek. "Bye, Grandma. Don't miss me," she said. "Go with God, dear." The pensioner closed the door behind her granddaughter. Everything that was happening in Olivia's life worried her. Nicole had raised the girl alone since she was 5 years old. The woman's son and his wife had died, and she had gone completely gray overnight. It is not known how Nicole would have survived the death of her only son and his wife if she had not had a granddaughter in her arms. It was not easy, but she raised the girl in care and love. A former teacher of Russian language and literature, she was proud that Olivia followed in her footsteps and also decided to become a teacher. "When she graduates from college, she will go to work at the school and help me." Nicole thought, looking out the window as her granddaughter walked across the yard with a small leather backpack on her shoulder. Mel caught up with Olivia on the way. They were walking together to the bus stop where they were supposed to meet the guys. "Did you like Kieran?" Mel asked her friend. "Seems like a nice guy," she replied vaguely. "How complicated things are with you, Olivia," exclaimed the girl. "What do you mean good? I mean, do you like him as a man?" "I don't know. I like him a lot. Strong, handsome, sociable, and a military man. I wish I could marry him and become a general's wife." Olivia laughed at her friend's so far-reaching plans. "To become a general's wife, you must first marry a lieutenant. I don't remember where I heard this clever phrase." "I don't mind." Kieran and his buddy were already waiting for them at the bus stop. They had backpacks and a collapsible barbecue in their hands. "Hi, girls," said Kieran. "Meet Adrian." "Mel." "Olivia." "Nice to meet you," Adrian smiled, looking at his girlfriends without embarrassment. "So are we going?" Kieran asked. The company headed towards the forest belt, beyond which the river flowed. The forest path was winding, leading deep into the forest, enticing the boys with the singing of birds and the sound of wind in the pine crowns. The place where the girls were led by the boys was very beautiful. The bank of the river, covered with young green grass, was strewn with dandelions. The rays of the sun were reflected in the water with shining sparkles, shimmering and rippling. The boys gathered wood from the forest and built a fire in a small brazier. The girls spread a blanket on the grass and laid out snacks. While Kieran put the meat on skewers, Adrian poured wine into plastic cups and served it to the girls. "Victory Day is coming up," he said. "I propose to drink to the military men who gave peace to our country." "Great toast," Kieran seconded, but not very polite. "Why is that?" Adrian didn't understand. "Because when there are girls in the company, the first toast is always to Mel ladies." Kieran looked meaningfully at Olivia. She seemed to him the heroine of a fairy tale. Her hair seemed golden in the bright sunlight, and her eyes were even more blue, like water in a river. "And we don't pretend to be superior at all, so I suggest we combine the two toasts and drink to the military women who helped the bravest and most courageous men to defeat the enemy." "What amazing ingenuity," Mel praised Adrian. The guys drank wine, chatted merrily, and enjoyed a pleasant conversation. The meat turned out very juicy and flavorful. The girls praised Kieran, who had prepared his own marinade for the kebab. "Yes, Kieran has many talents," Adrian said. "He is exceptional in general." "And what is his exclusivity?" Mel asked. "Tell me. We know almost nothing about him or you." "What can I tell you? He's a fine fellow. He'll make a model officer. Kieran is a man of his own principles, which I would not advise you to compromise." "What kind of principles?" Mel asked. "For example, he won't lend money on principle. It's true, girls, you can't ask him to die." I even took offense at him at first. What's wrong with helping a friend? And a friend could spend less money, instead of throwing it away left and right. Adrian smiled and rebuked Kieran for his wastefulness. "He also believes that marriages are made for great and pure love." "Isn't it?" Kira argued with his friend. "How can you create a strong family if you don't love a person?" "Come on," Adrian grumbled. "Love is pure chemistry. You meet someone, look into his eyes, and a chemical reaction takes place, and then..." "And what next?" Mel looked at the boy who spoke so boldly about love. "And then the brain shuts down and uncontrollable things happen." Adrian rolled his eyes amusedly. "Euphoria engulfs two people who are drowning in each other's arms. And then children. Common life, constant lack of money, snot, diapers, work, pots and pans, laundry. In short, this is how what in our world is called family life begins." Everyone laughed merrily at the theatricality of Adrian's speech. He was generally good at joking, easily picking up on any topic, and was cheerful throughout the picnic. Kieran, on the other hand, seemed thoughtful. He was watching Olivia very closely. Noticing this, she began to feel uncomfortable. She stood up and walked toward the river, squatting down and touching the water with her hand. "Cold?" She heard Kieran's voice behind her. Olivia stood up and turned around. Not really, but it's too early to swim. Adrian shouted, "Can't you swim across the river?" "What do you want to bet?" Kieran asked. "Easy." Adrian approached his friend. "Or can't you do it?" The boy started to take off his sweater and then his jeans. Kieran looked at Adrian, squinting his eyes. "I accept the challenge," he finally answered and began pulling off his clothes. "Guys, just kidding. That's enough." Olivia was worried. "The water is so cold, you'll catch a cold." "Come on, Olivia. The boys want to show who's braver and stronger. Let them fight for the victory." Mel stood next to her, excited for the exciting competition. "What's the prize for the winner?" Adrian asked. "A kiss, of course." Without even thinking about it, the girl replied. "Let's get this over with." Olivia was still trying to talk the boys out of this crazy idea. The river was small, but it was dangerous to stay in the cold water for long. "Kieran, you seem like a sensible man. Please drop the argument." The guy came so close to her that she could hear him breathing. Olivia's heart sank. "Don't be afraid of anything. I'll swim across," he said quietly and lightly touched the girl's cheek with his fingers. Olivia froze, feeling the color spill down her cheeks, but Kieran was already walking toward the water. He and Adrian jumped into the water and swam to the opposite shore. The girls froze in impatience, wondering when they would get there and not have to worry. At one point, Adrian pulled ahead, but Kieran quickly caught up with him and overtook him, and then his head disappeared beneath the surface of the water. Olivia gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. "He drowned, Mel." "No, it'll come out. Trust me," she said, staring off into the distance, her hand over her eyes as she shielded her eyes from the glare of the sun. "Where are you? Kieran, show yourself already." But Kieran was nowhere to be seen. The minutes dragged by slowly. It seemed like an eternity had passed when the boy's head appeared on the surface. He was 10 or 15 meters ahead of Adrian and reached the shore very quickly. Kieran stepped onto dry land and waved to the girls, who didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In the few minutes it took for the boy to disappear under the water, they had become very nervous. "Fool," Olivia said quietly. "Cool." Shaking her head, Mel said. When Adrian also appeared on the opposite bank, the girls had already calmed down. They saw the friends shake hands and walk along the bank toward the automobile bridge. After about an hour, they returned to the picnic site. Olivia was packing her things, empty containers and dishes, into her backpack. Her whole demeanor showed that she was upset, hurt, and about to leave, but Kieran didn't seem to notice. "Where's my prize?" he asked cheerfully. "I'm waiting for a kiss." Olivia saw Mel jump up to him, put her arms around his neck, and kissed him right on the lips. "You're a real hero," said the girl enthusiastically. "Olivia, aren't you going to kiss the winner?" Kieran asked, but the girl only took her backpack in her hands and walked towards the forest. She decided to leave. Her head was a little dizzy from the wine she'd drunk, and she was beginning to ache from the experience. Olivia stepped out onto the path they'd taken to the shore and headed into the woods with a determined stride. She was angry at the guys who'd made her worry, at Milka, who could kiss a guy she didn't know so easily, at herself for being shy and timid. The girl didn't notice that she had stumbled and twisted her foot. A sharp pain made her crouch on the ground. Olivia felt her ankle, her hands touching it painfully. She tried to get up but immediately sat back down, groaning in pain and helplessness. She couldn't walk any further. Olivia realized she had gone too far to call for help. The boys wouldn't hear her voice in the thicket of centuries-old pines. Olivia cried. "Why do I always have bad luck?" she thought. The day had started out so well, and then the boys had gotten into this stupid contest and she was in such a bad mood. And now her leg. Olivia heard the crunch of twigs and turned around. Kieran was walking down the path. When he saw the girl, he ran up to her. "Olivia, what's wrong? Why are you crying?" "I twisted my leg. It hurt," she complained, wiping her tears and sniffling her nose. "Let me see," he said, lifted the pant leg on her ankle and touched it with his hand. Olivia froze as she felt his touch. It excited her. She jerked her foot away, startled by the sensation, and moaned again. "I see," said Kieran. "Can you stand up?" He lifted her to her feet, then picked her up and carried her down the path in his arms. Kieran's strong arms cradled Olivia so tightly that she didn't even resist, trusting him. Kieran carried Olivia all the way to the house, and then lifted her, carrying her in his arms, to the 4th floor. Grandmother opened the door. "Oh my God, what happened?" She splayed her hands, clearing the passage. "I twisted my leg," Grandma Olivia replied. Kieran walked into the room and sat her down on the couch. Sweat was beading on his forehead. Only now did Olivia realize how much strength it had taken for him to come all this way carrying her. "We should call an ambulance," Nicole said worriedly. "Don't," the boy stopped her. "Do you have a bandage?" It was in the medicine cabinet somewhere. Nicole opened the cupboard and pulled out the shoebox that held the medicine. A moment later, Kieran was applying a tight bandage to Olivia's ankle. "I'll fix the leg and you just keep it off for a few days and the pain will go away," he said, cutting the tip of the bandage. "Grandma, I forgot to introduce you." Olivia remembered that she hadn't even introduced her savior to her grandmother. "This is Kieran. We went on a picnic together." "I'm Nicole." Grandma smiled. "Why didn't you look after Olivia, Kieran?" The boy looked embarrassed but didn't lower his eyes, just looked at Olivia. "It's my own fault, Grandma," she said. "Now I'll stay at home all the holidays." A boiling kettle whistled longingly in the kitchen. "Young man, I'll ask you to move the table to the couch, and I'll bring everything to tea," Nicole said, nodding at the coffee table in the corner. "I'll make tea with strawberry jam for the hero and savior. Do you like strawberry jam?" "I love it," Kieran replied cheerfully. A few minutes later, they were having tea. Kieran could see how proud Nicole was of her granddaughter. She gladly pulled out an album and showed him Olivia's baby pictures, which embarrassed the girl. "Look, Kieran, how funny she is here with the huge bows," Grandma said, pointing her finger at the black and white picture. "I took her to the 1st grade, and here we went to the sea with her. And this is the graduation. Isn't she beautiful?" Kieran nodded, looking at the picture of a pretty girl with a braid over her shoulder. They chatted some more, and Kieran got ready to leave. "Can I come visit you sometime? To see how your leg is?" he asked Olivia. "Come, I'll be waiting," she said it so easily, so naturally, as if she and Kieran were old friends. Olivia wished he would come and see her. And when the grandmother slammed the door behind the boy and came back into the room, she found her granddaughter smiling. She was sitting with her legs stretched out and resting it on the stool Kieran had carefully placed before he left. In her hands was a teddy bear, once given to her by her parents. "Are you keeping a secret with your favorite teddy bear?" Nicole asked, smiling. "Don't you want to share it with me?" "With what?" "Like how and where did you meet this Kieran guy?" "In the park, Grandma. Why didn't you like him?" The girl was suddenly worried, afraid that her grandmother would find faults in Kieran. "Not at all," replied the pensioner. "Nice guy. Have a good time, baby." Nicole left the room, closing the door behind her. After a while, Olivia heard her humming something in the kitchen. Grandma always sang when she put the dough in, so it's going to be pies tonight, Olivia thought, closed her eyes, and fell into a happy, deep sleep. The next day she waited for a call from Kieran, but he didn't call. Busy, probably, Olivia thought. She spent the rest of the day reading. In the evening, Mel dropped by. As usual, brightly painted in a miniskirt and a blouse with a décolletage that showed off her ample breasts, she made the quiet atmosphere of the apartment noisy and cheerful. "It's your own fault," she reprimanded Olivia for leaving the picnic, twirling in front of the mirror. "If you'd stayed with us, none of this would have happened. Thank Kieran for finding you so quickly." "Yeah, he's good," Olivia said thoughtfully. Mel looked at her carefully. "Hey girlfriend, you're not in love, are you?" she asked with a sly squint of her eyes. "I didn't want to be in love with you," Olivia said, and I felt her cheeks reddening. "Kieran's a really nice guy, the kind of guy you could fall in love with. He brought me home, sat me right here, bandaged my leg." "Well, You know, Adrian's just as good, Mel said with her arms at her sides. He walked me home, too, and came to visit. He was visiting you, Olivia wondered. Why? We still have some wine left. Mel plopped down on the couch with her friend and suddenly covered her face with her hands. Olivia, we had everything with him. Everything, you know. He left me just before morning. Olivia gawked at her friend. Mel, of course, was a flighty girl who did crazy things all the time, but to sleep with a guy they'd just met a few hours ago. Olivia couldn't get her head around that. Did he confess his love to you? She asked Mel, hoping that at least it wasn't just a fling under the influence of good mood and alcohol, but the beginning of a long and serious relationship. Are you two together now? I don't know. Mel took her hands away from her face and stared thoughtfully at the TV. I don't know. Mel removed her palms from her face and stared thoughtfully at the TV. Then why did you let him in? What's the big deal? You can't die from lack of male affection. As you know, it's a fish out of water. What cancer? What fish? What are you talking about? Olivia shrieked. If he slept with you, he must be serious. Yeah, you think Mishka from gym class had intentions too? And Kolka from law school? If all the guys I slept with married me, I'd be a sultaness with my own harem of men. Mel and Olivia laughed. Indeed, the boys were paying attention to the bright and cheerful Mel, and she was in no hurry to drive them away from her. But Adrian had more than caught Olivia's friend's eye. She really wanted to continue her relationship with him and maybe even get married. However, Adrian simply kissed Mel on the cheek and said bye without saying anything about a new meeting, but she hoped that he would call and ask her out on a date. Olivia and Nicole were going to spend Victory Day watching movies. There were a lot of old and new war movies on the program. They sat comfortably on the couch, teacups and cakes on the table in front of them. Olivia didn't feel like going outside, even though she and her grandmother went to watch the parade in the town square every year. And this time, Nicole was feeling healthy. I'd better stay home and watch the parade on TV, she said to Olivia. Do you think your Kieran is marching in the parade now? Why is he mine? Olivia was outraged. He hadn't even called in a week. Okay, she'll worry, call again, or come over. Hello, here I am. Nicole smiled. Her girl seemed to really miss her new acquaintance. Olivia and her grandmother hadn't even had a cup of tea yet when the doorbell rang in their apartment. I'll get it, she said. Her leg wasn't aching anymore, and Olivia was able to get around the house just fine. She opened the door and was stunned. Kieran stood on the threshold. He was so handsome, and handsome in his military uniform, smiling so charmingly that Olivia couldn't hide her joy. Hey, he said. Happy holidays. Kieran handed Olivia the box of cake. She took it and stood there, smiling. Can I come in? Kieran asked, and Olivia snapped out of her stupor and led him into the hallway. Grandma, she shouted, we have guests. Come in, we're having tea, you're just in time. Nicole looked out of the room. Young man, you're on parade today. She gave him an approving glance. And then on parade, laughed the boy. We've been preparing for the festive march all week, and we haven't had time to visit you at all. We're not offended, the pensioner waved her hand, although someone here missed you very much. Bah, Olivia yanked her back. What a BA. Go to the kitchen. Get another cup and saucer for our wonderful guest. We'll celebrate Victory Day. Olivia's grandmother definitely liked Kieran. She suddenly sounded very tired and sent her granddaughter and her boyfriend out for a walk. I'll lie down for a while, rest in silence, and you go, there are people having fun. Artists probably perform. Kieran and Olivia walked around the city until late afternoon. They watched the performance of various amateur groups, went on rides in the park, and fed the ducks on the pond. The boy and girl did not even notice how it got dark outside, and citizens began to gather on the square to watch the fireworks. Olivia looked at the colorful scatterings with her head tilted back, and Kieran couldn't take his eyes off her delighted face. He mentally said, how beautiful you are, Olivia, and it turned out he'd said it out loud. Olivia looked from the night sky, lit up by the salutes, to Kieran. What did you say? She asked. I didn't quite hear it well. I love you. Kieran said, and kissed her on the lips. When she got home, Olivia was over the moon. Her grandmother was watching TV, but when her granddaughter appeared in the doorway, she turned it off by pressing a button on the remote control. Grandma Olivia rushed over to Nicole and hugged her. "I'm so happy you can't even imagine." "Why can't I?" "Yes, I can. You think I wasn't in love?" "Kieran told me he loved me." "He's a good guy, he won't hurt you," said Grandma. "Don't hurt him either. Appreciate what you have between you." It was a hot summer, with almost no rain at all. The residents of the city were suffering from the heat, escaping the scorching rays in the shade of trees, in parks near fountains, and on the river bank. The forecasters' predictions were disappointing. The heat would last for several more weeks. "Would you like some ice cream?" Kieran asked Olivia. "I can't eat it anymore." She looked at the boy with a pleading look. "Every day only ice cream saves me from this heat." "Do you want to go somewhere?" Kieran asked. "Like where?" Kieran had a vacation after graduating from the academy, and Olivia was on vacation. They were completely free and spent almost all their time together, dreaming about the future, making plans together. "If you want, we could go north," Kieran suggested, and Olivia couldn't tell if he was joking or serious. "To the polar bears," she laughed. "We can go to the south. We will swim in the sea and sunbathe on the beach under the southern sun," offered another option, beloved girl. "Kieran, the words sun, tan, beach make my eye twitch." "Well, I'm sorry, but I just want somewhere to be with you, you know." So that there was no one else at all, he hugged and kissed the girl. "Come on, let's go to a campground. There is a great place outside the city. There are houses, forest, river." "It's a good idea," Olivia agreed, but she felt a sudden fear, a bad feeling, and clung tighter to Kieran. The next day, the two of them took an electric train out of town. The administrator of the camp met them at the gate. "I'll show you around," the young man said, inviting you to follow him. "I understand you booked a cabin away from everyone else, so I left you that apartment over there." He pointed toward the forest and led Olivia and Kieran to their cabin. It was small, surrounded by pine trees. There was one large room with a couch, a table, and a large bed. "Here is the tea station." The administrator showed a kettle and a box with tea bags. "You can use it. The canteen is open on schedule. You can buy drinks, pastries, some food from morning till evening in the cafeteria. After dinner, there is dancing on the grounds. Come along if you want to have fun." "Oh yeah, linens are in the closet. Towels are there too. Make yourself comfortable, and if you need anything, call me." The young man left, remembering to close the door behind him. Olivia sighed, looking around. "What are we going to do?" she asked. "To walk, rest, and enjoy each other," Kieran answered. He wanted them to remember the weekend spent at the camping site, because he was going to say the most important words to his favorite girl. "I feel uneasy," Olivia said quietly. "Worried about Grandma? Thinking about how she's going to be alone without you?" "I don't know. Something just came up." "Well, I'll try to take your mind off your sad feelings," said Kieran. "The first item on our cultural program is a trip to the river." They spent the whole day walking through the woods, boating on the river, swimming in water as warm as milk. Olivia and Kieran even skipped lunch, eating the pies that the caring Nicole had put in her bag. When it got dark, the boy and the girl sat on a bench near their cabin, admiring the stars and kissing. Kieran hesitated to tell Olivia the important news, afraid that she would be upset. "Is something bothering you?" Olivia noticed her lover's condition. "Yeah, we're going to have to break up." The girl pulled back and looked into Kieran's eyes, and he realized he'd picked the wrong words. No, you misunderstood. I'm going on a business trip." "For how long?" Olivia asked. "I don't know, maybe 6 months, maybe a year." The girl knew that there was a military conflict in one of the friendly countries, and that troops were being sent there to settle the unrest. But she had never thought that it would affect her and Kieran. "When?" Olivia asked, hoping that the moment of parting wouldn't come soon enough. "The day after tomorrow," the boy lowered his head. "If you only knew how hard it would be for me to leave you, I'd go crazy." Olivia put her palms to his face and looked into his eyes with a loving gaze full of concern, understanding, tenderness. "When I come back, you and I will get married. I promise you." "I love you very much," she said quietly, almost in a whisper, and then added, "Let's go." Olivia took Kieran's hand and led him into the house. She slowly undid the buttons of her dress and slid it to the floor, revealing a slender body in white lace lingerie. "Give me this night," Olivia said. "I'll be waiting for you, remembering every moment, every second." The lovers didn't sleep a wink until morning. They caressed each other again and again, plunging into the abyss of passion. 2 months had passed. Olivia stood in the bathroom mirror and looked at her face. Blue circles under her eyes, sunken cheeks, pale skin. She didn't look good. She moved her gaze to the sink, where a pregnancy test lay on the edge. 2 stripes were clearly visible against the white background. She was going to have a baby, a part of the person she loved. But Olivia was more worried than happy. Kieran hadn't sent a single letter, and she'd checked the mailbox several times each day. There were no phone calls, no messages either. Once, when she met Adrian, Kieran's friend, on the street, Olivia asked him if he had any news. But the guy shook his head, for some reason averting his gaze. The girl understood that in hot spots. There was no time to think about girls and love relationships, but it was possible to find a minute to scribble a couple of lines, "Everything is fine. I love you. I miss you." And now this pregnancy. Olivia thought about how to tell her grandmother so she wouldn't worry her too much. Nicole had been complaining more and more lately about her heart and high blood pressure. Olivia had called the ambulance again yesterday, and the doctors had insisted on hospitalization, but Grandma had flatly refused. "I will die at home, not in a government bed," she said, barely able to move her tongue, and signed her refusal with a weak hand. When she left for the institute, Olivia was always worried whether something had happened at home or how her grandmother was doing. The anxiety for her nearest and dearest people kept her from concentrating on the lectures. Mel was always trying to get Olivia to wake up. "Wake up, everyone's looking at you," she said as the entire audience stared at the girl, who had her eyes closed and was mumbling something under her breath. Olivia's friend sighed and shook her head. "You can't torture yourself like this." But there was no shadow of the old Olivia, the Olivia with whom they'd gone out in the evenings, shared secrets and made plans for the future. Olivia seemed petrified. "Olivia, what took you so long in the bathroom?" she heard Nicole's voice. "Breakfast is on the table. Hurry up or you'll be late for school." Olivia sat down at the table and reached for a sandwich. But when she felt a nasty lump in her throat, she put the piece of loaf with cheese and sausage back on the plate. After she drank her coffee, she kissed her grandmother and walked out the door. On the way to the institute, the girl met her friend. Mel stood near the entrance to the building and smoked a cigarette. When she saw Olivia, she waved at her. "There won't be a first class," Mel said. "The teacher's sick, so we can go shopping." She tossed the cigarette butt away and slung her bag over her shoulder. She noticed that Olivia was in no mood again. Mel understood that she missed Kieran, that she was in love, that she was in love, that she was waiting to hear from him, but she thought she shouldn't be so upset. "Nothing again?" she asked her friend. "No, there's other news, though." "Well, what's the news?" Mel tugged on Olivia's arm. "I'm pregnant." The girl pulled a test out of her purse and showed it to her friend. "Shit, how could you do that?" Mel said, surprised and frustrated. "How?" Olivia didn't understand. "Careless, that's how." Mel handed the test back to Olivia and reached for the pack of cigarettes that was sticking out of the pocket of her bag. "Stop smoking," Mel, her friend, told her. "I just threw it out." "I'm allowed. I'm not pregnant, ... thank God." "What are you going to do? You're not going to have a baby alone with no husband, no money and no education, are you?" "I'm going to," Olivia said quietly. "You can't kill a child for lack of money and unfinished education. It wasn't his fault." "Oh, come on." Mel waved her off. "What baby? There's a little pea in there yet. Don't be a fool. I have a phone number of a good friend. She will arrange everything, but you'll have to pay. Do you have money?" Olivia was silent, absorbed in herself. She heard her friend's words, but they sounded distant, barely audible. I said I had money to pay for the abortion. Mel shook Olivia's arm, trying to shake her out of her stupor. I'm not having an abortion, Olivia said. It's my and Kieran's baby. It has to be born. You're an idiot, Mel exclaimed. Where's your Kieran? No? And what makes you think he wants that baby? Did he ask you to bear him children? Or maybe he promised to marry you? Kieran will come back and everything will be fine, and I will give birth and wait with the baby for him. In the evening, Nicole and Olivia watched TV together. The girl thought about how to present the news so that her grandmother wouldn't get too excited, but she didn't even have to say anything. Nicole, who had raised her granddaughter since she was a little girl, knew her too well. Are you thinking about how to tell me about the delay? She asked, keeping her eyes on the TV screen. Olivia was silent. Her grandmother's foresight, her gift of sensing the state of her beloved granddaughter, always amazed the girl. You're worried, Olivia, wondering what to do, how to move on, right? Okay, Grandma. And it is possible not to think, but just to live. You should not try to rewrite your destiny. It is written long before the birth of any person by someone from above. You are doing a thankless job by racking your brains, doubting, thinking over every next step. What should I do, Grandma? Olivia suddenly put her head down on Nicole's shoulder, and Nicole put her arms around her and stroked her head. Just to live, the pensioner replied calmly. To live and enjoy every new day. What do you think Kieran would say if he found out we were having a baby together? Olivia asked, looking into Nina Petrovna's eyes. I would say the same thing. You have to live and raise a child, love those who deserve it, and make each of their days better, happier. I'm scared. Don't worry, you'll give birth by the end of the course. You'll be with your baby all summer, and then I'll help you. I'll take care of the baby while you're at the institute. Then you'll get your diploma, and that's it. What if Kieran doesn't accept the baby? Don't think about it. It's going to be okay. The new year was approaching. The streets of the city were covered with illuminations. A huge Christmas tree was put up in the center, shining with thousands of lights, and the counters of stores were bursting with New Year's goods clappers, sparklers, glittering balls, and soft toys. Olivia and Nicole pulled out a plastic Christmas tree and began to decorate it. Your parents brought this tree back from vacation, my grandmother recalled. Now it is no longer fashionable, but back then few people had such trees. Don't throw it away when I die. Let it be a memory. Don't talk. She's going to die, Olivia said, half jokingly, half seriously. Have you forgotten how you promised to help me with the baby? It's not like I'm going to die next year, Nicole laughed. The news was on the television. The announcer, in an elegant blue suit and tie, was saying something, but Olivia wasn't listening, only catching some of the phrases. Suddenly she shouted, "BA, turn up the sound," and she got off the stool she had climbed on to put a star on top of the tree. More than 50 of our soldiers and officers are missing. Their fate is still unknown. In other news.
Grabbing the remote, Olivia began to press the buttons, switching channels, hoping to find a newscast somewhere else. But in vain. The end of a sentence the newscaster said made her uneasy. Apparently they were talking about the military sent to settle a localized conflict. Kieran could have been there. That explained why there were no letters or messages from the boy.
Olivia sat down on the couch, her heart racing. She reached for the table where the pitcher of water stood, but suddenly passed out. I'm awake. A man in a white coat leaned over Olga. How do you feel? It's fine, Olivia said, trying to get up from the couch.
You're lying down. You don't have to get up. The doctor returned her to the pillow with a gentle but insistent motion of his hand. You're lying down. The doctor gently but insistently moved his hand back to her pillow.
What's wrong with me? I understand that you were worried and fainted. There is no threat of abortion, but I would recommend that you lie down, rest, and don't be nervous. Don't watch TV. It's only bad for you, the doctor smiled. Better listen to music. Which one? Olivia didn't understand.
Anything that gives you pleasure. Turn around, we'll give you a shot. It's a sedative, don't worry.
The EMT and paramedic said goodbye to Olivia and Nicole, wished them health and a happy new year, and left. "You scared me." Girl grandma shook her head. She covered her with a blanket, turned on the wall lamp, and sat down in the armchair. "Grandmother, do you think he's missing too?" Olivia asked. "We don't know, Mel. Let's hope all is well. Your Kieran comes back." By the end of winter, Olivia was no longer hiding her position. Her belly was clearly protruding, growing larger with each passing week. She carried the pregnancy easily, successfully passing her classes and studying for exams. And when the baby kicked her for the first time with its little foot, she circled the significant day in her grandmother's wall calendar with a red felt-tip pen. There was still no word from Kieran.
"Mel, can you ask Adrian to ask around about Kieran amongst his contacts? They went to school together, so maybe someone knows something?" Olivia asked her friend.
Adrian who? Mel didn't immediately realize who her friend was talking about. "Oh, that Adrian. I haven't seen him for a long time."
"What? Aren't you two together?" Olivia wondered. "I thought."
"What's there to think about? We slept together a few times, and then I got bored with him. He doesn't take me to a restaurant, he doesn't take me out, he doesn't have much money, he doesn't give me presents. I like it better with Vincent from journalism school. You know what kind of car he has? It's so hot." Mel continued to talk about her new lover, and Olivia wondered if she should go to the academy herself. Maybe they knew something about her lover. The next day, she was already standing at the checkpoint. The officer on duty demanded a pass, which the girl, of course, did not have. Not without a pass, he kept saying the same thing when Olivia asked him to let her through. "I need to know about one man," she begged. "He was sent on a business trip, and I haven't heard from him in 6 months. I can't help you. If you get a pass, I'll let you in. But in the meantime, get out of here. You're not supposed to be here." Olivia turned and walked away, but the clerk suddenly called out to her. "Girl, try to go to the military enlistment office. They should know about everyone who. Well, you know where." "Thank you," Olivia thanked him, and she headed off to the enlistment office. As she got on the bus, she wondered why she hadn't thought of it before. Only the military could tell what happened to those who were sent on a business trip. "And who will you be to him?" the captain asked Olivia in the duty room through a window with an iron grill.
The girl is confused. She's basically nobody to him. A close acquaintance, you know. "We only give information about military personnel to relatives." The captain looked at her with a cold stare. It seemed that even Olivine's pleading eyes couldn't break through that ice block.
The girl came out of the building. A woman was sobbing nearby, trying to comfort her, and a young man was standing nearby. "Did something happen to you?" Olivia asked. "Should I call an ambulance?" The guy looked at her, shook his head. "No, I called a cab. It's coming. I'm taking my mom home. My brother died on a business trip in a hot spot. We just found out." Olivia's legs felt woozy. What if Kieran did too? She squeezed her eyes shut. No, not that. He was fine. She would feel it. She couldn't help but feel it.
Completely frustrated, Olivia returned home. Nicole was lying on the couch. A tonometer and several packets of pills on a stool next to her.
"Grandma, what?" "Blood pressure." Olivia rushed to her grandmother. "Yes, baby," Grandma said quietly. "I've had some medicine. It'll make me feel better. I'll call the doctors."
Don't bother people," Nicole stopped her. "It'll pass."
"You tell me if it gets worse, okay?" said the girl. "I'll tell you to go eat. There's soup on the stove and cutlets. Go on, Mel." Nicole closed her eyes. Olivia adjusted the blanket and went into the kitchen. She was really hungry. The girl heated up some soup, cut off a few slices of fresh bread. Having eaten quietly, she washed the dishes behind her. Trying not to make any noise, Olivia tiptoed into the room where her grandmother slept. With a glance at the old woman, she walked to her room and lay down. Tired from the long walk, Olivia fell into a deep sleep very quickly. When she opened her eyes, it was already dark outside the window. The girl got up, drew the curtains, and turned on the light in the room. Her grandmother must still be asleep because no sounds were heard. Olivia went into her room and called out, "Bah, are you asleep?" There was no answer.
Olivia moved closer to Nicole and took her hand. The palm was icy, lifeless.
"Granny, wake up, Granny." The girl touched her cheeks, shoulders, shook her arm, but the old woman didn't show any signs of life. Olivia called an ambulance and the doctors diagnosed a heart attack. After the grandmother was taken to the morgue, the girl called a friend. "Mel, please come, please. Grandma's dead," she said quietly. In half an hour, Mel was already sitting next to her, hugging Olivia. She didn't cry, she just wanted someone to be there for her. And she had no one else but Mel and Kieran.
A month had passed since his grandmother's death. Olivia was coming home from the institute. From week to week, it was already time for her to give birth. The women's clinic even suggested that she go to the maternity hospital.
"You'll take vitamins, get drips, prepare your uterus for labor," the midwife told her. But Olivia refused. She needed to take as many credits as possible, close all her debts at the institute, and consult with her academic assistant about whether she should take a sabbatical or whether she could write and defend her diploma without a year's break. Thinking about all this, Olivia didn't notice when a beautiful blue foreign car pulled up next to her and a familiar male voice called her name. "Olivia, hi. Don't you recognize any old friends?" The girl slowed down and turned her head at the voice. Adrian jumped out of the car. He looked stunning: black suit, snow-white shirt, shined shoes. "Hi, Adrian. What a meeting." Olivia rejoiced. She hadn't seen Kieran's friend in a long time. The thought flashed through her mind that maybe he knew something about her lover. "What's up? How's life?" Adrian asked, hugging Olivia lightly around the shoulders. "I see you're doing well. When are you due?" "Soon enough." "Come on. I'll give you a ride," Adrian offered and pulled the girl by the arm. Olivia tried to refuse, saying it was good for her to walk, but Adrian was adamant. He opened the car door and gently placed Olivia in the front seat, then walked around to the driver's seat. "Shall we?" He was still as cheerful as the first time Olivia had seen Adrian. "How are you, Olivia?" Adrian asked, turning onto the avenue. "I know about your grandmother. My condolences." "Thank you. I'm fine. I'm going into labor any day now. The baby is kicking so much I can't take it anymore. And I can't wait to see him." Adrian smiled and nodded his head, looking at the road. "How are you doing?" Olivia asked him. "Working," the guy replied uncertainly. "Did I? I thought you were going to serve. I haven't seen you in a long time. I thought you'd been assigned somewhere." "That's what happened. They were going to send him to the Caucasus," Adrian replied. "My father got involved. He gave someone some money and put him to work for his old friend's company as head of security."
Do they pay well? Olivia didn't know why she'd asked that question, probably just to keep the conversation going.
"I'm fine. I have enough to live on," Adrian replied. "Here we are." The car stopped in the driveway. The guy looked at the girl, smiled. "Will you invite me for tea? Let's have a little chat." "Come on." "I don't really have anything for tea," Olivia said. "You don't have to." Adrian opened the door, helped Olivia out of the car, and with a click of the remote, locked the car doors. They reached the 4th floor and Olivia pulled her keys out of her purse. "How do you get up to the floor with a belly like that? It must be hard, isn't it?" Adrian asked. "And if you're carrying bags when you come from the store?" "I don't store much," Olivia said, smiling. "Why?" "I don't need much, and I don't have much money." "You can't get by on a scholarship, even if it's an extra one." She opened the door and invited Adrian in. The guy was visiting Olivia for the first time. He noticed that the girl didn't live very well. And where would the wealth come from? At least her grandmother used to get a pension every month, but now it's become difficult. Adrian walked around the apartment. The furniture was old, but well maintained. The wallpaper had not been reglued for a long time, and the television set. Such things were rarely found in the apartments of city dwellers. "I'll put the kettle on now," Olivia said. Pouring tea into cups, she asked Adrian, "Have you heard anything about Kieran?" The boy looked at Olivia carefully. Beautiful, even despite her huge belly, she looked at him, trying to hide her anxiety. She wasn't very good at it. "I didn't want to bring it up with you first, but I knew you would." Olivia sat on a stool, stirring her tea slowly with a spoon, her head bowed slightly. Her bangs fell over her eyes, and she fixed them with a light hand. Adrian had a hard time fighting the urge to run his hand through those straw-colored curls. He liked Olivia a lot.
"Do you know anything about him?" Olivia looked up at the boy.
"Not specifically about him," Adrian replied. "But they say that the whole company was killed."
Olivia covered her mouth with the palm of her hand to keep from shrieking.
"This can't be. I believe in the best, too. After all, Kier and I were friends. I went to the military enlistment office. They said they don't give information to strangers. And there was a woman crying. Her son had been killed on that business trip. They don't disclose information so as not to worry people," Adrian said sadly, but rumors spread faster than television news. "Can your father find out anything about Kieran through his own channels?" Olivia dared to ask Adrian. She knew that his father was not the last man in town, had extensive, very useful connections.
"I'll ask Olivia. I promise." Adrian finished his tea and got ready to leave. "I gotta go. Business. Can I write down your phone number and you can keep mine? In case you need it."
"Of course," Olivia said with hope in her voice. Maybe Adrian would know something and call her. They exchanged phone numbers and the guy left. Olivia sat down on the couch thinking. They were friends, but they were very different.
The next day, Olivia's phone rang. She was about to go to bed, having just gotten out of the shower.
"I'm listening," she replied. "Hi, it's Adrian." She heard the phone ring. Olivia's heart raced, wondering if he'd found out something about Kieran.
"Yes, Adrian, go ahead." "Are you still awake? Can I come in? I'm right here, at your doorstep."
"Sure, come on up," Olivia said, and she hurried to throw on a robe over her nightgown. Adrian walked into the hallway carrying 2 huge bags and pulled them in front of the girl. "Here, the humanitarian aid has reached you." Smiling happily, he said.
The boy took off his shoes and strode into the kitchen. Olivia watched in amazement as he put meat, sausage, cottage cheese, milk, candy, canned goods, several kinds of cheese, juices, tea, coffee. The groceries didn't fit on the table anymore, but he kept putting them out of the bags.
"What is it, Adrian?" the girl asked in surprise. "I told you, humanitarian aid." After finishing the groceries, he sat down on a stool. "I didn't ask. Why?"
"Olivia, I just wanted to help you and make you happy," Adrian said. His words sounded sincere, kind, and the smile stayed on his face. Olivia wanted to scold him at first to make him take it all back, but when she saw how pleased he was to do something for her, she melted. "Well, let me at least give you some tea," she said, turning on the gas stove and filling the kettle with water.
"Can we have coffee?" Adrian asked. "I have to be on duty with my men until morning today. The chief has come up with some kind of reinforcement, so we'll be waiting for the enemies until morning."
"What enemies?" Olivia didn't understand. She was even a little worried. "I'm just kidding," the boy said. "They just asked me to be on duty until morning."
They drank tea and talked, but Olivia waited for Adrian to find out something about Kieran and tell her. Finally, when she couldn't bear it, she asked him directly. The boy grew sad for a moment. He seemed to be struggling to find his words.
"You don't have to wait for Kieran anymore, Olivia," he said finally. "No one has any other information. It's all confirmed."
What was confirmed? Olivia didn't want to believe the worst thing that could happen to her lover. Kieran is gone. In one ravine, our military found more than 20 decapitated bodies, officially recognized as the bodies of dead men from Kieran's company. "I'm sorry."
Olivia covered her face with her hands, crying bitterly. Adrian stood up, walked over to her, and put his arm around her shoulders. Suddenly she cried out, and clutched her stomach. "Oh, Mummy. It hurts," Olivia moaned. Oh, I think I'm in labor." "I'll call an ambulance." Adrian frantically searched for his phone. "No, I'd rather drive myself. It would be quicker that way." He helped the girl get dressed and went down to the car, calming her down, saying some ridiculous words that everything would be fine soon, at the same time cursing at the careless drivers who were obstructing the traffic. Adrian pressed the gas pedal. Soon the car entered the courtyard of the maternity hospital and slowed down at the steps. The boy jumped out, opened the door to help Olivia, and gently led her into the waiting room.
"Anybody there?" he shouted. "There's a girl in labor here." On a sunny April morning, Olivia sat in a hospital bed holding her baby boy. The baby had been born strong and healthy. Black hairs tousled on his head, just like Daddy, Olivia thought as she stroked her son, holding him to her chest. Her heart was full of love for this little man, the most dear to her in the world. The door to the room opened and a nurse came in. She was holding a huge bouquet of roses in a bag. "Provoshina, Olivia, there's a message for you," said an old woman. "Look at the flowers they're carrying for moms now, 100 of them in a bouquet." In the past, fathers would come to the window, pick daisies and dandelions from the flower beds, and their grandmothers would rejoice, as if they had brought flowers. They loved them. Nanechka laughed, put the bouquet on the nightstand, and put the bag on her neighbor's nightstand.
"Who's it from?" Olivia asked.
A representative, in a suit, said that the note was in the bouquet, but he went under the windows, it seems, said the nurse.
Olivia put the baby in the cuvette and herself took a small card out of the bouquet of roses. "Congratulations on your son." Look out the window, she read the message, written in beautiful, even handwriting. Adjusting the robe across her chest, Olivia walked over to the windowsill. A smiling Adrian was standing below. When he saw the girl, he waved his arms. The guy shouted something, but Olivia could hardly hear anything. The windows in the ward were closed. Then Adrian ran to the car and opened the trunk. From there, he pulled out a luxurious, very expensive baby stroller, blue in color. But
Olivia watched in amazement as he showed her the different positions: a stroller for stroller sleep, a car cradle, a carrier, and this is how you can carry a baby when they're already sitting up. Suddenly, Adrian slipped his hand into his pocket and showed Olivia his cell phone. He dialed her number, and the room resounded with the sound of an incoming call. "Why did you spend so much money?" Olivia asked with a laugh. "It's a very expensive stroller. I wouldn't spare anything for your baby. He'll ride like a real king."
"Thank you so much," Olivia thanked him. "For what?"
"For everything." Adrian looked at her and was silent. Skinny, pale after childbirth, in her hospital gown, she was so touching, so real, so tender, so desirable. "I'm right here. Call me if you need me," he said calmly, emotionless. And then he was gone. Adrian waved to Olivia, got in his car, and drove out of the hospital yard. The girl looked thoughtfully at the car as it drove away. "I wonder why things didn't work out with Mel. Adrian is so caring and open." She remembered her friend and decided to call her and tell her the news. Anticipating how happy Mel would be to hear that Olivia had given birth, how she would start asking questions, she dialed her friend's number. No one answered for a long time, and then she heard some unintelligible sounds. Olivia thought something was wrong with the connection and decided to call later.
On the day of discharge from the maternity hospital, Olivia and the baby were met by Adrian. Over the next few days, the young mum hadn't been able to reach Mel. At first, she was a little worried about why her friend didn't contact her, but then she decided that Mel had found a boyfriend again and was head over heels in a relationship. So she couldn't be bothered with Olivia. It wasn't just Olivia who was having a party. As soon as they heard the music, women in labor and other wards of the hospital leaned against the windows. In the courtyard of the hospital, the musicians were ready to play a touching song on command. Fountains of balloons and fresh flowers were set up around the hospital.
What a celebration yours made for your discharge. The midwife shook her head approvingly. A caring father, there aren't many like him nowadays. Most of them come drunk or, at best, hungover. Olivia didn't bother to reassure the doctor that it wasn't the baby's father. Why would she? It was a complete stranger, and she didn't need to know the details of the patient's personal life. For a moment, she thought about Kieran. Why fate was so cruel and he died without even recognizing that he had a son. It was a pity for Olivia, and that the grandmother wouldn't get to see her great-grandson.
Look, are all the body parts in place? Jokingly asked the midwife, undressing the boy. Here are the hands, here are the hands, here are the feet. There are 5 fingers everywhere. Look at him, he is smiling. He understands that he will go home with Mummy and Daddy.
The woman began to dress the newborn, and when she finished tying a beautiful bow on the envelope, she said, "Hold your happiness tight. Grow up healthy and come back for your second."
Olivia thanked the midwife, and they walked out onto the porch of the birthing center together.
At that moment, music came on and a handsome male baritone began to play. The love song moved Olivia so much that she even wept. Adrian walked over and embraced the baby. The staff was in tears at the touching scene, which was watched by the entire maternity ward. When the music finished, dozens of colorful balloons soared into the sky. "What did you name him?" Adrian asked, examining the boy by lifting the edge of the envelope. "Taylor," Olivia answered. "Taylor Swan." Adrian looked at her. At that moment, there was so much happiness and tenderness on Olivia's face that he couldn't resist hugging her. The driver with his camera jumped up in time to take a wonderful picture.
Olivia hadn't been able to reach Mel because she'd been out. She was in the hospital, the same hospital where Olivia had given birth, but 1 floor up, in the pathology department. "What's going on outside?" she asked her roommate when she heard the music. Mel couldn't get up and walk to the window. She had just been given an IV.
"Some of the young mothers are met by a happy and loving daddy," replied a neighbor in the ward, who was sitting on the windowsill and watching what was happening in the yard. "What, with an orchestra?" Mel wondered.
Hey, musicians, balloons, flowers. A happy woman who has such a husband. He'll probably carry her in his arms and give her child the best, she sighed, stroking her bulging belly.
Where do men like that come from, Mel thought, thinking that Adrian would never do such a thing. All he wanted to do was dive into bed with her, enjoy himself like a young stallion, and not care what happened afterward. Mel didn't dare to tell Adrian that she was pregnant for a long time. She had relationships with different guys, but she always took care that there were no surprises and took birth control pills. But apparently she somehow managed to skip taking the pills, and one day a pregnancy test gave her a positive result. Damn it. She threw the test in the trash can in frustration. We have to solve this problem right away. She dialed the number of her friend who could help and arrange an abortion, but she didn't answer. Mel decided she would call later. Toward evening, Adrian called to say that he would be coming to see her tonight. He entered the hallway at 8 o'clock sharp. Mel's small apartment was instantly fragrant with the scent of expensive, refined perfume.
"Did you miss me, my little hen?" Adrian grabbed the girl by the waist and pulled her tightly against him. "Missed you, of course," she said, smiling. "You don't come so often lately. You've forgotten all about me." "You'll forget you." The boy dragged her to bed, tearing off Mel's silk robe and underwear as he went.
Throwing her on the bed, he unzipped his pants. "Take off your clothes properly," Mel said, panting with excitement and passion, but Adrian was on top of her, growling like a wild animal and roughly overpowering her again and again. When he shuddered and groaned and collapsed, pressing her into the soft, springy mattress, she whispered.
Why so rude? A tear rolled down Mel's cheek. She was hurt that Adrian had acted like a street whore, like he'd raped her.
He rolled over onto his back, adjusted his pillow, and said quietly, "I'm sorry, something came up. Give me a cigarette." Mel reached for the pack.
"Are you in trouble?" she asked. The girl had already gotten to know Adrian's character very well. Sometimes he was rude to her, but more often he came to relax in her arms and complain about his unloved job, his failed military career, his overbearing father who decided everything for him.
"No," Adrian replied. "It's fine." "I have something to tell you." Mel decided to tell Adrian that she was pregnant. There was a faint hope in her soul that the guy would want a child and marry her, or at least that they would raise the baby together. She agreed to it even without a wedding, without a stamp in her passport. Adrian took a drag on his cigarette and released a cloud of blue smoke from his mouth.
I just found out today ... I'm pregnant. Well done, you've created a problem for yourself. Now you'll solve it, the guy said indifferently.
You got me pregnant. Mel rolled over onto her stomach and looked into his eyes.
Adrian was quiet for a moment, finished and put the cigarette out on the ashtray, then stood up and pulled on his pants.
Mel, I'm not a child and neither are you, he said, and the girl felt the metallic tones in his voice. You and I both know what we have in common. I never promised you anything, and I certainly never dreamed of having children with you. Adrian, but it happened. I didn't do it on purpose. She got it. The guy was buttoning his shirt. And how do you know it's me who got it, and not the other men you've been screwing around with?
Adrian, how can you do this?
Why? You think it's a secret to me that it's not just me you're spreading your legs in this bed? You're a whore, Mel. You're just a painted, brainless whore. You think anyone would want to have children with you? I can't even imagine you as a mother. What can you give your children?
I don't understand why you're doing this to me. I just wanted to tell you the news, because we have to decide what to do together. Mel got up from the bed and put her arm around Adrian's shoulders. I'm not forcing myself or this baby on you. I'll have an abortion and that's it. Just don't leave me. Adrian pushed her away, pulled several large bills out of his wallet and tossed them on the nightstand.
There should be enough here, he said, and walked out of the bedroom. A second later, Mel heard the door slam shut in the hallway. What an asshole, she thought, picked up her phone and dialed the number of the grocery delivery phone.
Hello, I'll have a pizza and a bottle of whiskey. Write down the address.
Adrian brought Olivia and the baby home. A security guard followed them up to the 4th floor of the girl's apartment, carrying heavy bags. Olivia was completely immersed in her thoughts. Even though she was happy, she had a lot of problems to solve: paperwork for her allowance, a call to the pediatric clinic, and a graduation coming up. Is she asleep? Adrian asked as Olivia entered the kitchen. He was taking groceries out of the bags and putting them in the refrigerator. I've got a lot of stuff here, so I figured I'd have enough for a while, and then I'd bring you whatever you want. I also bought some baby stuff. I didn't know what I'd need. Olivia glanced at the bags of diapers, onesies, bottles. Thank you. You're a big help. It's because I love you ... and your baby, Adrian said softly. The girl looked up at him. It seemed to her that Adrian was different now, different from before. Serious or something. Olivia, trust me, it's going to be hard for you to raise a baby on your own. And I'll do anything for you. I've liked you since the first time I met you at the bus stop when we went on that picnic. But I couldn't tell you then. You realize. Adrian, you're kind, caring, sweet. I don't know what I'd do without you. But you know I don't love you.
It doesn't matter, as long as I love you. You'll never, ever regret believing me. I'm begging you, let's get married. I'll be a good father to Taylor. His father, as Kieran Olivia looked out the window and watched the children playing in the yard. Taylor would grow up to build sand towers in the sandbox.
It's sad and painful, but Kieran will never see his son. I can keep his memory alive, always telling Taylor what a hero his father is. And maybe you and I can still give Taylor a little brother or sister.
Feeling him come up behind her and touch her shoulder, Olivia turned, looking intently into Adrian's eyes.
What about Mel? The girl asked. What will she say when she finds out? Mel and I had never had anything serious, just meetings for fun. Neither she nor I ever loved each other. And anyway, Mel wasn't made to be a wife and mother, and you're different. A baby cried from the room. Olivia hurried to the baby, and Adrian sat down at the table and thought. It seemed to him that Olivia was about to agree to his proposal. They got married. They decided not to have a wedding or a big party, which upset Adrian's parents very much, but he was firm in his decision. "We have a young son. No time for weddings," Adrian said as he cut off to his parents. For a year, they'd been adjusting to each other. Adrian went out of his way to do everything for Olivia and Taylor. He bought expensive gifts and jewelry for his wife and toys for Taylor. Olivia saw her husband's efforts and was grateful, but every day she noticed more and more how much Taylor looked like Kieran. He had the same eyes, hair, even a smile. The girl never forgot her lover. Adrian saw it all, felt it all, and hoped that time would heal the wound and cover with the dust of oblivion the memories of his wife about Taylor's father. Olivia was walking with her son in the park one day. Taylor sat in his stroller, gazing around. He had a cookie in his hand. Olivia rolled the stroller down the alley. The girl came to this park often. There was no traffic noise, birds were singing, and she could always talk to other moms, just like her, walking with strollers. Suddenly, a tall, slender girl caught her attention. She staggered down the alley, sometimes falling, struggling to get up and walking again. Olivia quickened her pace a little. "Young lady, are you ill?" she shouted, approaching the stranger. And she collapsed back onto the paving stones, leaned on her arm and tried to get up. "Come on, I'll help you." Olivia held out her hand to the girl, and when she looked up, she recognized the stranger as her old friend. "Mel, what's the matter with you?" Olivia exclaimed in surprise. She helped her friend up, sat her down on a bench, and rolled the stroller with Taylor closer. Her friend was drunk. Her hair was strewn over her shoulders. Her clothes were dirty, and an arrow was crawling down her leg in black capron stockings. Mel recognized Olivia, looking at her with a hazy stare that reeked of alcohol. "You look good." "Thank you, Mel," Olivia said. "Why are you here like that? What happened to you?" "And a lot of things happened to me." Mel burst into a coarse, drunken laughter. "And you, and your Kieran, and my Adrian. A lot has happened to all of us." "What do you mean?" Olivia didn't understand. "Mel, are you sick? Do you need help?" "Help?" The girl opened her purse and pulled out a pack of cigarettes. She turned to Olivia and squinted her eyes. "You're the one who needs help, living in a fog and not noticing anything around you." "What are you talking about? Wake up, Mel, we were friends." "And I'm not friends with traitors. You betrayed everyone, me, Kieran. You know how bad I felt when you started living with Adrian. And you know how bad Kieran felt when you wouldn't even let him look at his son." "What the hell are you talking about?" Olivia didn't understand what her former friend was trying to accuse her of. "Do you have any money?" Mel asked her suddenly. "There's a card," replied Olivia. "Let's go." Mel struggled to get up from the bench and walk down the alley. Olivia followed her, rolling the stroller with her son in front of her, not wanting to let her go until she explained everything and told her about herself. They reached the nearest supermarket. "Give me the money," Mel said. Olivia handed her a bank card. Her friend entered the store and came out a short time later holding a bottle of alcohol. Soon they were sitting in the kitchen of Mel's apartment. Olivia was amazed at how messy the rooms were. There were things scattered everywhere, bottles, dirty dishes in the sink, and an ashtray full of cigarette butts on the windowsill. Mel took a glass and poured herself from the bottle. "I'm not offering you one. I know you won't," she muttered and raised her glass. "Cheers." "How did you come to this, Mel?" "Rolled and rolled and rolled and rolled and rolled. And you helped me ruin my life with Adrian. He told me you didn't have anything." Olivia tried to justify herself. "Well, of course, there's nothing but 2 kids." "What kids?" Olivia thought Mel had gotten drunk and was talking nonsense. But her friend got up from her chair and shuffled to her room, her torn tights shuffling across the floor. When she returned, she placed a photograph in front of Olivia. It showed 2 babies. They looked no more than 3 or 4 months old. "This is Ciara and Vincent." And their father Adrian, pointing her finger at the picture. Mel said, "My children, the twins." Olivia looked at the faces of the babies in surprise. They were lying on the beautiful blanket next to each other, looking exactly alike. "You had a baby with Adrian? When?" Olivia exclaimed in bewilderment. "Only 6 months ago. and that asshole didn't recognize the kids, and I had my parental rights revoked. With his connections, he made a quick deal and put the kids in an orphanage. Everything she'd heard from Mel seemed unbelievably crazy to Olivia. Adrian couldn't do that. Yes, he had connections, he could do a lot of things, but putting his children in an orphanage. And then he wanted to kill me. He got me drunk and tried to strangle me, but Kieran wouldn't let him. He hit him so hard. Mel laughed, her laughter sounding unnatural, theatrical. Kieran, who? What are you talking about? I don't understand anything, Olivia said, and stopped drinking. She took the glass from her friend, catching an angry look. Your Kieran punched him. Adrian was choking me and he punched him in the face. Mel, wake up. Kieran died on a military trip. No, he didn't. And he saw you. Where? I beg you, pull yourself together and tell me everything in detail. It turned out that Kieran was back, and the first thing he did was to stop by his friend's house. As he approached the driveway, he saw Olivia and Adrian come out of the door. The guy had a small child in his arms. They smiled at each other, talked about something, and then got into the car and drove away. A few days later, Kieran decided to find out about Olivia and Adrian from Mel. He went to her house, knocked on the door, but no one opened it. In his heart, the guy banged on the door. It was unlocked. Entering, he heard the sounds of a struggle, ran into the bedroom where Adrian was choking Mel. Kieran punched him and pulled him away from the gasping girl. Ah, he's back. Adrian, recognizing his old friend at once, said, Hero, now you're going to get your rights, but your Olivia is no longer yours. She's my wife and we have a son growing up. Adrian pulled his passport out of his pocket and took out the picture that had been taken when he was discharged from the hospital. Olivia was smiling from the photo, and the boy was holding a newborn baby in his arms. As she listened to her friend's story, Olivia could hardly believe what was happening. It turned out that Kieran was not dead, as Adrian had told her. He was alive and knew nothing about his little son. Give me a glass, Mel asked quietly, calming down. I need a drink. Olivia moved the glass, watched silently as her friend poured the liquor into it, and then asked,
Why didn't you tell me?
Don't you understand? I hated you with all my soul. Where's Kieran now? He's probably gone. Who knows where he is? Mel waved her hand uncertainly.
Why didn't he come to me, but went to Adrian first? He didn't mention it.
Nope, the girl shook her head, pouring herself another. I understand him though. He's so handsome, proud, strong, and he'll come to you one-armed. What do you mean, one-armed? Olivia didn't understand anything at all. Everything Mel was telling her could have been the plot of a stupid show, like so many shows on TV nowadays. But it couldn't have happened in real life. And his arm was torn off on a business trip, Mel said, collapsed her head on the table and snored. The girl fell into a dead, drunken sleep. Returning home, Olivia wondered how to go on with her life. On the one hand, she has a strong family, a caring husband, a favorite son. On the other hand, Kieran, as it turned out, is alive, and he thinks that Olivia left him, preferring to live with Adrian. She was hurt that he hadn't made himself known, hadn't come to see her, but had appeared in front of Mel and a former friend. All day, thinking about how to live on, she decided that she would not change anything in her life. But Mila should be helped. 3 years had passed. Olivia and Adrian lived in a spacious apartment and raised Taylor together. The baby was growing up to be a very bright, active boy, constantly demanding attention. Olivia spent the whole day dealing with her son, and in the evening waited for her husband from work. Sometimes, looking out the window as he drove up to the entrance and parked the car in the yard, she thought that more caring than Adrian husband could not find. He spent all his free time with his wife and son, and last year they flew to Italy together. The doctors said it was good for the boy to breathe the healing air. For his 3rd birthday, Adrian gave Taylor a huge battery-powered car. The boy wasn't very good with the car, but he squealed with delight when his dad helped him steer it and race it down the long hallway. The whole family gathered to celebrate Taylor's birthday. Adrian's parents treated Olivia and her son calmly, not complaining, but every chance they got they had the pleasure of reminding her that she was an orphan and a dependent. Olivia didn't like it, and Adrian just waved it off, saying, "Never mind." Her husband's older sister often reproached Olivia for running around with her son like a piece of paper, and Adriana still hadn't given birth. As she set the table for the party, Olivia thought she would have to endure the reproaches, taunts, and sarcastic phrases directed at her again. Lately, she'd noticed more and more that Adrian himself was bringing up topics that insulted and offended his wife. Why he did so, she did not understand. When they were alone, more caring and affectionate Adrian could not imagine anyone. But in the presence of people who were strangers to Olivia, he always found something to pick on. And this time he was out of line. Olivia's taunts amused her in-laws. Everyone at the table seemed to be having fun except her. "Adrian, stop it. I feel bad." Olivia tried to stop her husband. But he went on. Then the girl could not stand it. Trying to appear calm, she smiled and said softly but very clearly, "The other day I went to the orphanage where your children live, honey. I looked at them, brought gifts and toys. You know, they're so cute. Why don't we take them for the weekend? The principal said it's possible." Adrian put his fork on the table silently, then slapped Olivia, grabbed her by the hair, and dragged her out of the room. The family stared at them, uncomprehending. "You've scraped it all together, daughter-in-law, on your own head," said the mother-in-law sneeringly. The guests continued to eat as if nothing had happened, placing appetizers and salads on their plates. "Mom, what kids did Olivia say Olivia was talking about?" Sister Adrian suddenly asked. "Who knows who she is? She's got some nonsense in her head, so she's just saying whatever she wants. Andriusha only has Taylor." In the kitchen, Olivia wheezed, trying to free herself from her husband's strong, clinging fingers, which squeezed her neck. Adrian pinned her against the refrigerator and hissed, trying to keep his voice low so the family wouldn't hear. "Who do you think you are? You think you can tell my parents and sister whatever you want? Let go or I'll scream. I know all about you and Mel, about how you put your own children in an orphanage and stripped her of her maternal rights. About how you've been lying to me all these years. Shut up. Have you forgotten the swamp and poverty I pulled you out of? What would you be blaming your bastard for if it wasn't for me? My son is not a degenerate. He has a father and he's alive. That's something to remember. You should be grateful to me for the rest of your life. You've been living like a cheese and butter. Let go or I'll tell your parents." Adrian looked into her eyes with anger. He loosened his grip and finally let go of Olivia. She sat on the stool, rubbing her neck where her husband's fingers had left marks. "How could you? You acted like a monster." "It's none of your business. Mel's a whore. I never loved her. And the fact that I gave birth to her is something you have to prove." Already, Olivia said quietly. "What?" Adrian didn't understand what his wife meant. "It's already been proven. Mel and I ordered a paternity test. Vincent and Ciara are your children. They're your blood twins. What kind of monster are you to throw your own babies out of your life? How could you deprive them of their mother? People like Mel can't be normal mothers. She's a slut and an alcoholic." "What are you talking about? Didn't you do everything you could to make her drink? Didn't you want to kill her? Kieran's a witness. He'll testify that you strangled my friend to get rid of her." "You can't prove anything." Suddenly, Adrian's eyes were aflame. No one would believe a degenerate alcoholic who'd been deprived of her parental rights.
"You're wrong. Mel has been in treatment and hasn't been drinking alcohol for a long time," Olivia said triumphantly. "She and I are almost finished with all the necessary paperwork. Soon she'll have her children back and she'll be happy. And I'm leaving you right now. I've had enough."
"Stop." Adrian grabbed her hand and gripped the girl's wrist tightly with his fingers. "Do you still want your relatives to know?" Olivia looked boldly into his eyes, determined to tell her parents-in-law what their favorite son was really like. The guy let go of her hand, lowered his head. "Go away and never come into my life again," was all he said. On a May morning, Olivia and Mel were picking up the children from the orphanage. Vincent and Ciara were all dressed up. Mel had bought them nice suits and shoes, and she was getting excited. The day before, she and Olivia had cleaned up the apartment, setting up the nursery in Mel's former bedroom. Now there was a bunk bed, a closet full of children's things, and a large basket of toys. Mila had a very difficult time. When she learned what had happened in her life, Olivia began to visit her friend whenever she could get away from home. When she went for a walk with her son, she bought food to feed Milka, but she kept demanding alcohol. But long conversations, convincing her that only by stopping drinking, she could get her children back, did the trick. Mel agreed to treatment. For 2 months, she was in a private specialized institution, where Olivia paid for her treatment. When Mel was discharged, she didn't look like the cheerful, mischievous, flighty girl her friend had known her to be. Something was broken inside her. She kept thinking about the children, berating herself for the mistake she'd made in her life by letting Adrian send them to an orphanage. Olivia, on the other hand, convinced her every time that everything could still be brought back. She did everything she could to get Mel the twins. And so today they would settle into this room with new baby wallpaper and a big fluffy rug on the floor. Looking around the room, pleased that everything was working out so well, Mel said, "Thank you, Olivia, and I'm sorry if I hurt you in any way." "Don't thank me, we're friends." "It'll be okay," Olivia hugged her friend, who had recently been ready to fall into the abyss, to lose the most important thing in a mother's life, her children. "Mommy, will they let me play with toys?" Olivia asked Taylor. The girls laughed. "Of course they will," they replied almost in unison.
"Well, shall we go?" Mel said. "We have to pick up some more cake and brownies."
Mel was happy that in just a few hours her apartment would be filled with children's laughter and happiness.
Walking home from Mel's, Olivia held Taylor's hand. They walked down the park alley that led to Olivia's house. The girl wondered how life might have turned out if she hadn't met Kieran in that park one day. Yes, she had been through a lot, but looking at the boy walking beside her, holding her hand tightly, Olivia was happy.
"What do you think of Ciara and Vincent?" she asked Taylor. "Good ones. Why were they living in an orphanage? They have a mom, Aunt Mel." "It happens," Kid Olivia answered uncertainly. Taylor was a bright boy and understood a lot of things, but she thought it was hard to explain to a child why children were abandoned by their parents. When he grew up, he'd understand. After Olivia packed her bags and left Adrian on her son's birthday, his relatives repeatedly called her and threatened to take Taylor away. Her husband never dared to admit to his parents that Taylor wasn't his son. Well, then Olivia had to tell them herself. Tired of listening to the threats, she did just that. "Taylor is not Adrian's son or your grandson," she told her mother-in-law. "So leave us alone and don't call again." Adrian's mother yelled something else into the phone, that she would sue, take a DNA test, take the baby away from Olivia, but she just hung up. Olivia wanted nothing more to do with those people. Tomorrow she would take Vanya to Mila's. Her friend promised to stay with him for a couple of hours while Olivia was at the interview. The girl was going to get a job at the gymnasium. If everything went as Olivia planned, Taylor, as a child of an education worker, would be given a place in kindergarten. Life was getting better. As she thought about it, Olivia walked leisurely down the alley, holding her son's hand. Taylor snatched his hand out of hers and ran down the path. "Taylor, where are you going?" Olivia shouted after her. But the boy ran and ran. He saw a beautiful butterfly and rushed after it. Suddenly, the child stumbled and fell with all his might on the paving stone path. Olivia rushed to her son's aid. She saw a strange man come to the child, lift him up and put him on his feet. "Son, you're all right," she ran over to the boy and squatted down to examine the wound on his knee, which was visible through his torn pants. "How could it be? How many times have I told you not to run?" She suddenly realized that a man had helped the boy up and thanked him without even looking in his direction. "Thank you so much for helping my son." "You're welcome, because that's my son too. How you doing, fighter?" Olivia slowly raised her eyes to the stranger who had come to her child's rescue. Her heart was pounding frantically. She stood up, not taking her eyes off his face. Kieran looked at her with the same kind, loving velvet eyes. "Hello, Olivia," he said quietly. "I've been waiting for you here for a long time." Kieran ... Love. Olivia couldn't believe her eyes. Taylor's father was standing in front of her, the man she loved most in her life. I thought I'd never see you again. I thought you'd never come back. How could I not come back? I promised you, remember? I promised you there, at the campground, surrounded by centuries-old pines, in our cabin, where we loved each other so much. I remember everything, and I never forgot, Olivia said quietly. Let's go home. The three of them walked down the park alley toward the exit. Kieran held his son with one hand. But Olivia didn't care that her boy's father had come back crippled. The important thing was that now they would always be together.